then from that place, God, universe, our souls, Peyote, all these things were then saying like, ding, da, da, ding, ding, ding. Now it's time. Now they've ascended to this place. Sovereignty, together now.
I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. If you listen to this show, you know that I always say nature is the ultimate biohack, right? So I've been doing a simple and natural therapy in my house every morning and sometimes in the evening for the past 3 years. And it has worked wonders for me. I've seen a huge boost in my testosterone levels. I have way less inflammation and my skin complexion has never been clearer. What's the secret? Well, every morning I spend about 10 to 15 minutes in front of my Joovv red light therapy system. That's JOOVV. Natural light is crucial for your cellular health, and most of us don't get nearly enough light for optimal health. But with my Joovv, I get a full day's worth of healthy natural light in just a few minutes right in my own home. Problem solved. I mean, I live in LA, it's sunny, but honestly, some days I don't get out there and do as much as I'd like to. So the natural light from a Joovv supercharges the mitochondria in your cell so your body can make more energy. There's all kinds of health benefits backed up by thousands of peer-reviewed clinical studies for those of you that like that. For the simple version of it, you can just go to joovv.com/Luke. That's JOOVV.com/Luke. Over there, you're going to get a special bonus from the team at Joovv, and you can dive into the research as to the efficiency and legitimacy of this therapy. That's joovv.com/Luke. Check it out. I want to take a moment to celebrate a couple things here. One is one of my favorite sponsors, Four Sigmatic. Man, these guys have been so loyal to me. They've been with me for years. I know you guys have supported them, and I'm just so happy to keep sending my listeners over to their website. But what I'm really excited about is their mushroom coffee. They make a lot of different products. They're known for their medicinal mushrooms, but the mushroom coffee is very special. It's got lion's mane, which is amazing for your brain. It's good for focus, productivity, and creativity. I drink this stuff all the time, especially when I'm recording. And it also has chaga, the king of mushrooms, that supports your immune system. And it's also a really potent antioxidant. So while these shrooms don't contain psilocybin, in other words, they don't make you trip, they really help you think. And with the caffeine and the coffee, it is a magical elixir, and I use it all the time. What's really cool too is that this has about half the caffeine of regular coffee. So due to the fact that it comes in little packets, you can kind of just put as many packets as you want depending on how much energy you want and how tired you are. So when I travel, I might put 3 or 4 packets in one coffee and just get lit. However, on a normal day, when I slept well and everything is as it should be, I'll put 1 packet, make myself a nice little shroom and coffee elixir every morning. My guests are also a huge fan of it. They often want tea when they come over, but when they want coffee, I always surprise them with how delicious and just amazing this mushroom coffee is. So I'd love for you to go check it out. Real easy to do. You go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Enter the code Luke Story at checkout, and you're going to save 15% off. That website is foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. You spell that FOURSIGMATIC, foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Check it out. Get yourself some mushroom coffee. You just tuned in to what is probably the most meaningful conversation I've ever had on this podcast. It's episode 275, Come Together, Alyson Charlies and the Art of Shamanic Love. Known as the rock star shaman for today's modern times, Alyson unites the wisdoms of earth, rock, and sky, star. As a spiritual teacher, spirit animal medium, TV host, and keynote speaker, she's revolutionizing the way ancient wisdom merges with the world we live in today. Oprah Magazine selected Alyson's guided shamanic spirit animal journey as a top meditation to try, and Forbes described her work as a full-fledged guide into your psyche. Marie Claire Magazine named her the next big thing, and Dazed Digital listed her one of the top 7 wellness accounts on Instagram, which, by the way, you can find at I am Alyson Charlies. You might as well follow me while you're at it, at Luke Story. If you were following both of us, you could have watched this on either of our accounts as we recorded this conversation live. As a leading pioneer in her field, Alyson brings her experience to the mainstream in powerfully creative ways. She's the resident guru for Well and Good, where she provides monthly spirit animal and energy forecasts. She made history in becoming the first person in the 25-year history of the HBO Film Festival to perform on stage, where she led a meditation for 10,000 people. And at the Pop Sugar Playground, the world's largest ever female-led festival with over 15,000 attendees, Alyson led a spirit animal journey. Meditations led by Alyson can also be found on Amazon's award-winning technology Alexa and Google Home. She regularly partners and speaks at renowned global brands like the New York Times, National Geographic Channel, Forbes, Art Basel, Saks Fifth Avenue, ABC Radio, Elle and Self magazines, and many more. And her wildly popular spiritual courses, Spirit School and Third Eye Certified, are repeatedly sold out each season. She's currently working on her first book in card deck Power Animals, which will be released in the fall of 2021, and her new podcast, Ceremony Circle, debuts this spring. In addition to all of that, she happens to be my best friend, my beloved partner, and my favorite person in the entire world. Now, before we jump into this intimate conversation, make sure to check out her brand new course, Spirit School. You can find that at soulreboot.alysoncharles.com. Now, if you enter the code Lifestylist there, you're going to save 10% off your entry. You can also find those links and all the other links for that matter in the show notes for this episode. Before we jump into this heartfelt and intimate conversation with my lady Alyson, I'd like to invite you to join me for an entirely different show this Friday with Dr. Rashid Buttar, Pandemic Power Play, Challenging the Media and Big Pharma Virus Narrative. Whoa, that one is a mind blower, folks. So you better just subscribe to this podcast so that one pops up in your feed, because if you're confused by some of the current events we're seeing unfold, I think you're going to truly be awakened by Dr. Buttar on Friday. Then Tuesday, back to our regular programming with Down to Earth, Regenerative Farming, the Soul of Soil, and Conscious Commerce with Ryland Engelhart. Now, this conversation with Alyson started out as a formal interview. I had some questions and such, but quickly took a natural and very vulnerable turn into a conversation about the nature and origins of our relationship and all the experiences that we've had that led us to our union. Here's a taste of some of the many intimate moments that transpired when we flipped the mics on. What has happened since we last recorded her first appearance, episode 111? And by the way, for more of her backstory, please go back and give that a listen as we just kind of jump into current affairs with her this time around. Then we talk about the moment we connected in that first meeting in New York City and the sparks that flew and how we chose to ignore them. How we're dealing with the COVID-19 lockdown while living together. Her experiences with plant medicines and how peyote was at the center of our becoming an official couple. The difference between plant medicines and recreational drugs, her long break from relationships and how she knew she was ready to explore again, how she learned to have a healthy relationship by being alone, what it was like the moment I broke out of the friend zone with her at a coffee meeting, our first date on New Year's Eve at a Kundalini yoga party, and what she thought of our first kiss, what makes our relationship work, and the tools we apply to keep our hearts open. In addition to the points I just outlined, essentially what you're going to hear in this episode is a fly on the wall, no holds barred conversation between me and the person I'm in the most beautiful relationship of my life with. And it was a bit vulnerable for us to present this episode. In fact, we were talking about it earlier tonight as I was preparing to record the intro, and we almost kind of had second thoughts. Should we put out more of an official interview in the regular Q&A format and then later on kind of have a chat about how we met and how we get along and how we're evolving together? And we thought, you know what? It is what it is. It's a conversation that is an open window into what I hope can be an inspiring and educational and open-hearted exploration into the romantic life we've shared together. And I'm extremely happy about everything that's transpired. And it's also just really fun to kind of share this. I know that listeners of the show that have been around for a while have perhaps watched my journey, and relationships are something I've covered a lot with many of our guests like John Wineland and John Gray and many other amazing experts on the topic. And it's been something that I've been fascinated with for years, because early in life, I chose to kind of ignore this part of my life and worked in my career and was up to other things. And I've been increasingly called to find a partner that I'm so aligned with, and I've found one. And that's what this episode is about. So it's about Alyson, it's about us, and I'm hoping that it will give you some tools and inspiration to perhaps improve the relationship you're in, or find one that you so desire. And if you're someone that chooses not to be in a relationship, that's wonderful too. And hopefully you'll get something out of this as well. Someday you might just change your mind and decide to jump off the deep end. Before we jump into this conversation with Alyson, I'd like to invite you to join both of us this Friday, April 24th at 11:30 a.m., where we're going to present a live stream with Frequency Mind and lead all of you who choose to join us in a guided meditation and shamanic journey. You can get entry to that online event at lukestory.com/events. And you can rest assured that this will be the first of many offerings that Alice and I do together. We have a great time. And you can rest assured that this will be one of many events that Alice and I will be presenting both online and in person in the near future. So you can find that again at lukestory.com/events. And with that, my friends, I'll invite you to join me in celebrating the lovely and wise Alyson Charlies. Here we are back again, Alyson Charlies.
All right.
Under such different circumstances.
Kind of couldn't be more different, because I used to call you my dear brother.
Ugh.
I found out a long time after that, yeah, you never really liked that, but went from, what was that really funny book title? I said, my next book's going to be From Brother to Boyfriend.
Ew.
And it's the story of how we went from me calling you my brother to being my partner. But yeah, everything has changed.
Well, to look at that more closely, when we were totally in the friend zone, the brother thing didn't bother me. It's only when I started getting my sights set on you that started to rub me the wrong way.
Okay.
Because when a woman's like, "Hey, you're my brother," then that's just so far into the friend zone. There's seemingly no way out of that.
Right. But I also explained that as a spiritual path walker and shaman, when I call a male like my brother or dear brother, it comes from that like sacred spiritual place. So for me, it was, and I've always told you I loved you too. The whole journey. We've known each other for about 3 years, and the whole time it was just such an kindred soul connection with you that even when we were both celibate and in the friend zone, I would always express that I loved you.
Maybe that's why, as a former fearful, love-avoidant, unavailable male type, that I wasn't really thrown off when you told me the time you really told me.
Right.
I'll admit, it was even a little, just under the circumstances, which I'm sure we'll go into, was a little like, oh shit, we're there already. But then every time we spoke, you would say that just perhaps without that much feeling.
That would be correct.
Yeah. So here we are. This is our first podcast together since episode 111.
Mm-hmm.
And God, we've come such a long way.
Individually and collectively.
And so I think I'll just start by telling anyone that wants to know the full backstory, at least that was like 3 years ago. We did 111, very auspicious number I came to learn later. But that's where we did like your whole backstory, your whole jam up until that point. So people that want a lot of backstory, even though we're going to give a bit of it now just for context, I want to encourage them to go back and listen to that. Also in episode 111 that we recorded those years ago in New York City, there was this key moment. And I've got the video from Facebook, as I told you. I have it saved in Dropbox for posterity. At some point, it will, be shown somewhere for some meaningful reason. There was this moment that we had, and I was in professional mode. I wasn't dating. I was celibate. You were too. I mean, I thought you were attractive and all of that, but I'm never going to give that kind of thing energy in the interest of professionalism and not to make things awkward.
And also just where you were at with doing your inner development work. You had cut that. Flirting was not allowed.
No. I was self-restricting all forms of intrigue and all that business. But there was a moment when we were recording, and the people that go back and listen to 111 will know this moment. But I think it was the first time I ever cried on my own podcast.
That's what she said.
And I wasn't in the habit of being that intimate, and vulnerable during those conversations. But I remember we got on the topic of relationships, and I was explaining, I have to go back and listen to it. We listened to it on the way to...
We didn't get to that part yet,
Yeah,
though.
We didn't get to the magical moment. But anyway, what happened was I was describing how at that point in my life, I had made a couple attempts to have relationships that were of a deeper intimacy than I had formerly had, and to be more vulnerable and more open-hearted. And the reason why I finally, as kind of a late bloomer, I think, as compared to most guys I know that, go out and really open their hearts and become vulnerable and run the risk of being heartbroken, was that I had done so much inner work over the years, the Kundalini yoga, all the practices, all the meditation, that my heart had opened so much, and this capacity to express love and to receive love had grown so big and so powerful that I literally couldn't hold it in anymore. And so I made a couple attempts at relationships in which I really did open my heart, or at least as capable as I was at that moment. And it was so terrifying. And the thing that I was always most afraid of did happen. It didn't work out, and it was really painful and all of that. But when I shared that with you in our prior conversation...
Or it wasn't private. It was on the podcast.
Yeah. No, prior conversation.
Oh, prior.
Yeah.
They said private.
I remember that moment, and I looked at you, and it was such a powerful moment, because you looked at me with such kindness, and there was this lack of judgment and this total complete acceptance that you had of me in that moment. And it was embarrassing, like, you're a pretty woman, I'm interviewing you, and all of a sudden I start to tear up, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm mortified. How is this happening? And you didn't flinch. You just leaned in and were just there. And it was a really powerful moment for me on the podcast. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I remember texting you and being like, dude, I'm going to cut out that one part. That was whack. I have to be cooler than that.
Yes,
my defenses came up, and that was way too authentic.
Yeah, you wanted to edit it out. But I think the big gem in that part is the deeper part of you really didn't. Otherwise, you would not have texted, you would not have messaged me and said that, because I think the deeper part of you knew I was going to be like what I said. I said, no, vulnerability is the real juice of life. That's what life is all about. You have to keep it in. And then you were just like, are you sure? Okay, I will. But deep down inside, I think you knew it had a place. But I understand, that it felt embarrassing. But for me, that's one of the things that I love about you so much. And in hindsight, and I think at some point we'll maybe get to reflecting more, but we look back to, of course, that time, because that was the first official time we met, was when I was on your show. And then I was really calling in, a sacred partner who had done years of work, who had really faced themselves, who had gotten to a place of security and what I consider true strength within themselves, where they can express vulnerably and be honest and open their heart up and be emotionally vulnerable with me. So in that moment, that I was really loving it. And I was the furthest from being like, how I feel embarrassed for him. I was just like, oh my God, this is this is what life is all about, So I loved it so much, seeing that side of you. And it's in that, those moments are so powerful and of service for everyone else to just let layers go and let their hearts open up too. It's a real medicine that transmits. And that was the moment. Sorry, and then I'll stop. But I will say that at that point 3 years ago, I had walked the path enough too that it really truly was a place of non-judgment, because I love one of my favorite quotes is, when you know yourself, you know the world. And after I had my divine intervention and my spiritual awakening and saw the truth of me and the veil lifted on earth and myself and my previous relationship that was the instrument for that awakening, it's like, once all of those veils lifted and I saw all those truths about myself, I really quickly realized I can never judge another again. You know what I'm saying? Because that's when I started to do shadow work and really face all aspects of myself. And so I am really strong at holding space for anything that needs expressed, It's
interesting in the age of social media and instantaneous sharing of ourselves, there's one side of it that's the polished, face-tuned photos and the perfect lighting and the perfect filters and, showing your perfect Rolex with your hand on the perfect BMW or whatever, like the kind of vapid, superficial side of social media. And not that there's anything wrong with that, because there's art in that also, right?
And it can be inspiring.
Yeah, there's the aspirational, inspirational part. But it's funny that there's this double-edged sword that's available to us, that we can use this unedited, free-form, live, instantaneous sharing of media to share the innermost true, most authentic parts of ourselves. And it was in that moment with you that, and thank you for your permission and your holding space for that, and also your encouragement of me to go in that direction. Because what happened was, as a result of that moment, it was a newfound liberation within me to take the conversations that I have on the show to another level, and to not really filter them in any way, other than sometimes just things. I mean, you know me now quite intimately. There's many things I say in private that I would never say on, the show or anything like that, because people wouldn't understand the context of it, and I have a really effed up sense of humor, etc. But in terms of telling my backstory and revealing things about myself that I used to be kind of ashamed of, and just having those moments of breaking down or heart opening or realization, the more I've dripped those out and also helped hold space and facilitate those experiences for the guests on the show, the more feedback I get all the time. It kind of pushes the envelope of that, because then someone will message in and say, oh my God, this was such a moving experience for me. I thought I was the only one that did that or felt this or had these experiences, etc. So in the realm of, the most intimate for many of us, in the realm of relationships and romantic intimacy and past eating disorders and addictions and so many things that...
all those shadowy stuff that we used to hold shame around.
Yeah.
They need breath and expression.
And they're the things that people love hearing the most, because I think in the era of that shiny, fake social media, and God knows the mainstream media in Hollywood, and where everything's very polished and
seemingly perfect.
Yes, synthetic in a way, that people are hungry for the real shit.
Well, right. And you're hitting on something that is so timely. Of course, when we have these kinds of conversations, it's like a ping pong table. I love it. Because right now, more than ever, it's about heart and tuning into our soul and our heart intelligence and being guided from the messages of our heart. And I even posted a long time ago on Instagram, something like, it's on a quote card I did, like, the new paradigm will be led from the heart. I was picking up on this area and time and the planet and the life that we're now at quite some time ago. And I was just having this conversation a couple of days ago with a fellow dear shamanic sister, Hey, Nicole. And we were talking about, there tends to be these two different styles of leadership. And one style of leadership is when someone kind of, in some ways, almost like barks orders at you and tells you, like, I'm going to lead. This is what's happening. This is what you need to do. This is what's going on. If you do this, you will feel this. And it's very like this kind of energy. It's very direct and strong and command-like. And then there's this other avenue of leadership that's just way more raw and to me feels more genuine in a lot of respects. And it's more from the heart and it's more vulnerable and more honest and more putting yourself out there as a leader, saying, yeah, I might be a spiritual leader, but this is what I'm currently facing with my shadow work or whatever's coming up for me in my personal life. And you're leading more from that avenue instead of acting like your life is perfect. And because I have it all figured out, I'm going to teach you what to do. And so I just think it's so beautiful that organically this got brought up now, because it is something I've been wanting to talk about a little bit more, just these two leadership styles. And to me, I think as a collective humanity, we do want more realness, rawness, and that comes from the heart. So I look forward to hopefully seeing more heart-led, genuine, embodied heart medicine leadership coming out on the planet. Aho.
Oh, yeah. I think the difference there is the new paradigm is that of modeling, right? Where you're kind of modeling what the journey to awakening looks like. And not just modeling the point of arrival, but modeling the journey along the way. That's one of the reasons I always like to show my ass, figuratively speaking, although I think I probably have showed it on social media.
In a creek, in a hot spring somewhere.
Cold plunging somewhere in the woods. But I like, one of the reasons I like live streaming all the things, like just now I did a story of like how shitty the other side of the studio looks right now, which is this tiny ass room, my man cave office / lifestylist podcast
it's
studio.
It's actually a really beautiful room. But...
No, it is. But like, with someone like me with an eye for detail, just the cables and the things out. And I'm just a bit, OCD aesthetically. But when we started here, I'm having a total meltdown because the printer wouldn't print my notes for the episode. And then so I went to reset the printer and it went on like this R2D2 possessed like Satan of a printer. It wouldn't stop. We're trying to record. And so those are the kind of things you don't see in mainstream media. All of that's hidden away. And of course, I want the finished product of this episode to not show any of that. But it's fun to be able to use social media to show like that everyone's human and that there's real shit that happens and that I'm freaked out before every interview in a total basket case. And then the minute I hit that little red button down there, something happens and I just like zoom into the person that I'm sitting with. And then, that's the finished product and that's where the real magic happens. But I think that, those of us that have some eyes and ears on us to whatever degree we do, I don't think I'm Tony Robbins or something, but a few people follow the show, a few tens of thousands at this point. And
you have like 4 million downloads, but I appreciate your humility.
Well, I never want to give the picture that I have it all figured out because that type of leader turns me off.
Me too.
I want to know that people are still neurotic sometimes, and that's what I loved about Ram Dass. God rest his soul, is even at the end of his journey post-stroke and all the things that he'd been through and all the years of psychedelics and, hanging with his guru and all that, he would still admittedly be like, yeah, sometimes I'm totally nuts. My humanity still shows up. And I think those of us that are on the path of enlightenment would be well advised to understand that the arrival point is you leave your body.
Correct.
Right? So it's like, do you really want to get there that fast?
Well, yeah. And in shamanism, at least from my perspective and the way that my shamanic medicine moves through me, is that it is the path of infinite evolution. And so there's nothing that excites me more about my earth walk in general, the spiritual path in general, and specifically the shamanic path in general, than that aspect of it. It's the aspect that every single day there are infinite places within myself, within my own being. And then beyond that, there are infinite places in the unseen realms in which I can traverse to learn and be in wonderment and to experience miracles and to question and to explore. And so I love how humbling this path is. The further I've gotten on it, the more humbled I've gotten. And I love that dichotomy. And so, yeah, I like the real rawness of it too. And the fact that we can always keep learning. So I don't ever want to act like I have it all figured out. Someone commented, it was one of my favorite comments of all time. I think it was just yesterday. And I wish I could say it better because I just glanced through it. But she said, I love that you don't seem like some untouchable celebrity. Like you're so relatable and so accessible. And I know that I know that you're no better than me. Like, and to me, that was a testament. I was like, oh, thank you for getting it, because I want people to always feel in safe space with my work. And when they go to my page, like, I'm learning and growing every single day, and I am no better than anyone else. I might be a shaman and I'm a spiritual teacher, but I am no better than anyone.
Well, I would like to say that I think you have your shit very together.
Thank you.
And it's inspiring to me to see how level-headed you are.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. More so than most people I know, male or female. Yeah, like sometimes I'm expecting you to be like, I don't know, maybe it's just my own, it's some of my own baggage that I just, childhood stuff, whatever, where I feel like someone's going to be mad at me all the time because I behaved in ways that pissed people off a lot. And I was around a lot of nutty people that had their own shit projected on me. But I'm surprised at how, even if like we ever do hit a rough spot or you get a little crunchy, as you say, around something, how quickly you're able to recover and get back to center, and how often I think there's something going on and I check in with you and you're like, what? We're good. What are you talking about? And it's like my own paranoia projecting that there's some kind of thing to talk about or some sort of problem. So I want to acknowledge how far you've come.
Thank you.
And also the fact that I don't know where you came from exactly. So I don't know, what I don't see the contrast there as I see within myself or other people that I've known for much longer than you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it is a vast departure to my pre-awakening life. Like pre-awakening, I was having a lot of anxiety attacks and panic disorder, and I still have rebel as one of my main archetypes. It's just now more healthily integrated. But the rebel in me growing up was expressing in a lot of unhealthy ways at many various times. And so it's been really beautiful for me to witness my extreme evolution too. It's such a testament to when you become devoted to the path, when you really get committed to a spiritual lifestyle and spiritual practices, it really works. Like, it works miracles every single day. I'm a totally different person. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wish sometimes that there was like footage of you being the old self, just so I could.
Oh my God!
You having a panic attack meltdown over some insignificant in hindsight event, and I don't really want to see it, but it would be interesting because I only know you as this really awake, bright and shiny, happy, supportive, awesome person.
I always had those aspects in me too. Like, I've always been silly and goofy and always had a bright aura and essence. But yeah, I was unhealed, and there were a lot of traumas and wounds that had not even been glanced at that point. And for almost 2 decades, as you know, I was in a very codependent, very dysfunctional, at times very traumatizing relationship. And so there was just a lot of pain body, a lot of shadow stuff that was not being healed. And that stuff can get pretty dark and pretty painful.
As someone who is working on herself all the time, as am I, and that is committed to the path of evolution and growth, do you ever find yourself focusing too much on the things that you still need to work on? I find for me sometimes it's difficult for me because I'm always looking forward to what's next. So it's difficult for me to look back. Oh my God, 20 years ago, I was, just completely neurotic and had all these drug problems and all of the
homeless
things. Yeah, that was one period,
I mean, I love your stories, and it's so inspiring. And I know a lot of people maybe from my audience don't know it. So yeah.
I mean, when I was homeless, let's be fair. I mean, I was not sleeping on the street, but I was sleeping in garages and things.
My favorite part about that story, though, and you know what I'm going to say, is the fact that even while you were homeless, you were still figuring out ways to like pay down your debt, and you were like still paying your bills and trying to be smart financially. I just, for some reason, that point highly amuses me.
Well, when I became homeless, which really was more of a couch tour than like under the bridge homeless, just to acknowledge the people that are truly, truly homeless. There were homes that let me in, and I would house sit for people and stuff like that, but I didn't have my own home. But one opportunity that I recognized at that time was, wow, I don't know what my rent was, maybe $1,000 a month at that point, but I was like, oh damn, if I was paying rent right now, I would be paying X amount of dollars, and so I would just apply that to some credit card debt that I ran up when I got my first credit cards or whatever.
But it's just such a testament to who you are, that when you're in the throes of your drug addictions and sleeping and living in this garage, that somehow this other part of your intelligence was like, I'm going to figure out how to pay down my debt.
That's probably, that comes from my dad. My dad's always been very fiscally responsible, very successful financially, and not cheap, but wisely frugal and just common sense. He's never been in debt. He's bought everything he's ever bought. I think he was in real estate. I think he financed one piece of land once, and it drove him nuts that he owed the bank anything. He's just, that guy is just old school, like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki, I think his name is. That's his vibe. Passive income, that stuff. But anyway, I digress. As someone who's come from a very rocky past, and if I look at where I was and where I am now, I'd be like, woohoo, I'm killing it. But because I'm always focused on improving and growing and evolving, I find that sometimes I'm a little hard on myself, and that I don't acknowledge my gains, because I'm always looking at the next thing. I'm like zeroed in on that thing, even if it's a relatively small personal issue or character flaw or something that I'm trying to overcome.
Okay.
Do you ever find that you're sort of trapped in always looking at, oh man, I still have to work on this, and I still have to work on this and work on this? How do you keep it in perspective?
It never feels like that essence that came out as you described it in that way, of that sigh of like, oh, or that kind of growl of like, oh, now I've got to work on this and work on this. I freaking love this earth life, and I love my calling in shamanism. And so to me, I think it's perhaps due to my many lifetimes doing this work and a combination of other things, but the evolutionary aspect, like I said, it's my favorite. So it never really feels like a chore. I will say the one area though that I have really grown in is I used to take the spiritual path a lot more seriously than I do now. And I think that was large in part because I was doing so much incessant shadow work at that time. And shadow work is not for the faint of heart. I mean, I had years of, really facing my greatest fears and doing the deepest work of my life. And so when you're traversing those waters and having those kinds of spiritual fires like raging and roaring through, and you're in so many aspects of the old you that has to die off in order for you to be the phoenix rising and to be an embodiment in the way you need to be of service the way you came here to be, and so on and so forth. Like those kinds of passageways on the spiritual path can feel extremely daunting. And so during those times, it did feel a lot heavier and a lot more serious. But because I'm so consciously aware, I would catch that. And if there were days upon days on end where I was just like in the depths and in the throes and just like feeling a lot of pain, I would pull myself out. And then I really made a strong pivot with that piece just since January, actually. My main go-to goddess is Goddess Isis from Egypt. And she's a ferocious, fierce, queen of magic and the healing arts, but she will take you to the places that you need to acknowledge to transcend. And then when January hit, there was a lot of huge pivotal shifts in my life. And one of which is I, bowed in honor to Goddess Isis, who will ever be my sister. And I have a lot of her soul particles in me, but I transitioned to working and calling in Goddess Anya, the Celtic goddess of lightheartedness and fertility and play and prosperity. And so when I called her forward to ask if she wanted to work with me and her permission to, co-create with her, it was like a full-on yes. And since I've invited her essence in to kind of teach and guide me and show me the way with this new way of living, it's been a lot of fun. I'm all about, I think before I also used to fear that if I was too much of a playful shaman, that people wouldn't understand the depth of sacredness to which I work from, or they would assume if I was, a playful shaman, really lighthearted shaman, they would assume that I've not really been through enough shit or faced and done the really hard, scary, deep work. So I was creating those own false narratives in my mind. And I'm just continuously facing it all and giving myself permission to be who I feel called to be. And I feel called to be a lot more joyful and playful right now. And it feels good in my body and it feels good on me. So I'm going to keep doing that.
It feels good to hang out with you.
Yeah, you tell me all the time. You're like, you're just so fun.
For those listening, we have the best time.
We really do.
It's ridiculous how...
We laugh all the time.
It's ridiculous how silly we are. It's so fun too, because I think it's, for where I was kind of going with that was sometimes I forget to celebrate the wins and the gains and to just acknowledge how much work has been done and how much grace has been bestowed upon me and how truly blessed I am to have not only survived the things that I've survived in life, but thrived through them. And that now is really on the eve of my 50th birthday this year is like time to celebrate for all the hard work that's been put in. And you really bring that into my life. And it's not even something I've had cognition around. It's just the air of playfulness that you bring into our home. And we just have the best time. And it's also really, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier in our first meeting there when I had this moment of just, cracking the armor of my heart open in front of you. And even though we didn't know one another, I still sensed, oh my God, it's very safe with this person. I felt so safe and so held. And in our current relationship, it's so much easier for me to stay in that celebratory place of freedom and playfulness and ease and can really be myself. And it reminds me of, advice I've gotten from my dad over the years, who's one of those that models the relationship for me. I mean, it took him a few tries. He's not with my mom or my brother's mom, but he's happily married for, I think, 20 years now. And as I've explained to you before, maybe not on the show, that I don't take advice from people that aren't doing what I want advice about.
Correct.
Right. So I'm not going to take financial advice from someone who's broke, and I'm not going to take relationship advice from someone who's had a lot of failed relationships and can't figure that out.
Right. But
one thing that he has always told me, and when I've called him when I'm down and out and, I've had the breakup or whatever, he's always said, Luke, you want a relationship that you're in, not because it's exciting, but because it feels like home, because it's comfortable. And I remember when I was some years younger, I thought, wow, that sounds boring. Who wants that? It's got to be exciting, or I forget the exact words, but that was the sentiment. I was recently speaking with someone and they said, I was asking them about their relationship, which is very healthy. And she said, God, I can't remember her name right at the moment. If you ever hear this, I'm so sorry. I'm having a brain fart. But it was at the Joe Dispenza thing. And I was describing our relationship as it was budding. And she said, yeah, with us, it doesn't feel like a drug. It feels
Is
like
it Christine?
Yeah, Christine.
Hey, Christine.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. And her husband, that Italian name. God damn it. Anyway, need more paracetam. She said it doesn't feel like a drug. It feels like home, and that's been, it's the same thing my dad was getting at. When I watch he and his wife, May, they're so relaxed. There's no tension. No one's walking on eggshells. There's no hypervigilance. It's everyone just has their guard down. They're just being themselves.
Yeah. PTSD isn't circulating through
Totally. Which I've experienced a lot.
Me too.
And, so it's so nice to have that playful air that we have and to just be fun. And I really don't think there's anything that I hold back from you. I mean, you see me at my absolute worst.
I really do.
Most nutty, and you just keep coming back. You laugh at me. When I think you're going to be pissed at me about something, you're just laughing because I'm being so ridiculous, and it's, and then when you have, you've had, I think maybe 2 days since we've been together where you're just like, heads up, I am psycho today, super irritable.
Raging.
Yeah, just, I don't know what's going on. And then it's wonderful to have that experience with you because I know it's not about me because you're able to communicate hey, I'm having this experience over here, so heads up, like tread lightly. And I know that it's not about me, and you're telling me it's not about me. So even if it does get a little bit sticky and we're not having one of those super fun free days where we're just farting around the house and just being ridiculously silly, that it's okay. It's like, cool. You're not always going to be up. No human being is ever going to be ecstatic all the time.
Yeah,
We're still,
you don't want that. I mean, you want to be able to, experience the full range of human emotions. And once you go into both sides of that spectrum pretty deeply, then it's through those experiences that you learn to trust yourself. And that's how I keep my center. And I think that goes back to that level-headedness, is like, I know at this point, no matter what comes my way, because of some of the deeply painful and traumatizing things I've been through, and I have been brought to my knees, and I have been in agonizing emotional pain and all of that stuff, because I've gone so far to the right on that end of the human emotion spectrum, it always pings you back the other way too. And I now trust myself. I know I can navigate any waters that come my way. That does not mean, now I will, one little bullet point that I add in is I let myself feel all that needs to be felt. I do not bypass. And that's such a key to shamanism and the spiritual path in general, is that you always want to let yourself healthily experience and tap into whatever emotions are presenting. The key is just being consciously aware of them and not getting attached to them and not falling into victim mentality or whatever the thing is for too long. But to not let a scary emotion enter in is what we call spiritual bypassing. And that's when it gets really dangerous, especially when one is a spiritual leader or teacher. You have to really watch out for people that have bypassed, who have not gone into the shadow work and have not really done the deep dives within themselves and done that lower chakra work. And they just kind of like cut off and only ping up to the cosmos. And they might be a genius numerologist or whatever, but if they haven't done the deep, dark work, you got to really be careful about those leaders.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of my personal practice is to not fight whatever happens to present itself.
Yeah.
There's a great
non-resistance.
Yeah, there's a great book that I refer to a lot from. I always call him my favorite teacher. I don't know if I have a favorite teacher, but one that really took me through some challenging periods, and that's David R. Hawkins. We haven't talked about him a lot, and I'm sure you're going to hear his audiobooks on long drives in the near future. But before he died, he wrote a book called, God damn it, what's it called? Surrender, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, something like that. Anyway, I've talked about it a million times. I never remember the name. So that's how I roll. But the whole book, which was his most simplistic writing, a lot of his other stuff was super deep, non-duality, like books you have to read 50 times to even like understand one paragraph. They're just like very dense and very high level, which is great reading because you never master it, But before he died, it was my sense that he wanted to leave something that was very tangible. And the whole book is about what you just described, like a detailed instruction on how to allow those emotions, whether it be like ecstasy or joy or utmost despair, shame, whatever it is, to allow them to fully manifest and to not fight them, because then they become suppressed or repressed and compartmentalized and compacted into your auric field, essentially. It's not the terms he used, but that's how I would look at it, or into the pain bodies you mentioned in the, way Eckhart Tolle would perhaps put it. But that was huge for me because I think so much of my life was spent prior trying to avoid any feelings that were remotely uncomfortable. And in that, I was always trapped in them because I could never go through and pass through.
Right. The only way out is through.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important. And it's, I'm on the receiving end of you having worked through a lot of the shadow stuff and faced it, so that you can access that place where those don't exist, or where you can. And I think I share this as well. I know that I do, actually, because I used to not be this way, where if you get triggered by something and there's an old wound that gets activated, rather than shutting it down, denying it, there's an acknowledgement and even sharing with your partner, hey, whoa, this trigger is hitting me right now. Let's both observe this trigger. Even let's say it's about each other, even, which is even more difficult, because then the vulnerability of your heart's in play, which is even more scary. But let's both zoom out from this, and I'm going to share my experience with you, and then we're both going to hover above it from the observer-witness perspective and observe those feelings as something other than what we are and who we are, right? Rather than being like, I'm angry. No, I'm experiencing something in my body that you could call anger, right? And then we can both step outside of it and go, oh, wow, look at that anger over there.
Yeah.
Right?
And those are those exact moments where the biggest test is like, are you going to get defensive or not? You know what I mean? Because at that point, especially like you said, if it's a partnership calling out trigger thing, like when you do this, it triggers me. And then you begin that exploration. Right then is that precise moment where the other person, perhaps understandably so, because we are human, can get really defensive because instantly your ego feels under attack and you think that this is a thing that's specifically about you. But if you can just stay in that heightened conscious state and be the observer and open up and pan out into that bigger orb to be investigated, that's when so much energy and expansion opens up. It's really powerful. God, there were so many other things pinging in. But I do think it's interesting. Can I because there's so many pieces with this one piece. I have had a breakdown. I won't get into the story, but I've had a legit massive breakdown when I was in my place in Brooklyn, probably a couple of years ago, where I was like slobbering. You know, those kinds where it's just slobbers coming out because or have you ever had that? When you're
I'm a man, dog. What?
You've never cried so hard that drool is just like, ah. So it was one of those. I mean, I was like on the floor, but it was so wild because my higher self went up to the ceiling. So I was in my body still to enough degree that I was having that human earthly experience, that my higher self was floating and I was able to witness myself from the ceiling in that human state. And so my higher self was able to watch that and see the beauty and the miracle in that and see the evolutionary work taking place. So even though I was in those throes and drool was just stringing down to the floor and I was like, then my higher self was like, God, this is so beautiful. Look at the beauty in this. And that's the place that you can get to when you let yourself traverse in all these ways. The other little quick nugget is back when you were saying that you used to push away the discomfort. I think it's really beautiful that even now in this present time, that's something you still watch about yourself and that you're still really conscious of, because you have openly brought that up to me too. Even in the moment where we became a couple, that piece was a bit at play in that moment too. So I don't know, that pinged in to bring up, and we can get into it as much as you want to, or if we talk and we want to share about the story of the moment we became a couple and all of that, which I'm sure they will want to hear. But that piece you still are watching. It's to a much lesser degree, but I think it's beautiful that you still keep an eye on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I have such a high level of skill for avoiding discomfort. And as you know, I also have so many tools, available in the spiritual and physical realm that can snap you out of that. And sometimes those are needed, and sometimes the real medicine is just sitting with it and acknowledging it. But I think in the context of relationship, what's been really fun with you is, and we haven't really had conflict, and because we're human, I'm sure perhaps we will, but there's been some, a few difficult conversations where one of us is not feeling great about something that involves the other person. And I think the really important distinction in terms of communication and just working through things like that. And I noticed this early on about you when we would have to talk. You would never say, you made me feel blank. You would say, hey, when this situation went down like it did, I experienced these feelings in myself.
Right.
Which is a huge distinction.
I see.
And see, that's the key that allows two people, and this could be in any relationship, to then immediately be in that observer position where you're both witnessing a phenomenon that's not you. It's something that the one person is experiencing. Mm-hmm. And what a great way to work through shit, right? Because if you tell me, hey, come here, can I talk to you for a sec? Yeah, you make me feel mad. You made me feel sad. You made me feel
when
this.
you did this.
Yeah, it's like, I can't make you feel anyway. You can make yourself feel a way by believing whatever story you're telling yourself about what I did or about a situation that transpired. But just that one little shift of just, hey, I'm noticing when this kind of thing happens, I have this experience inside and I have these sensations and these thoughts and these feelings. Let's take a look at that.
That's exactly how it goes.
That's so awesome to be able to relate in any relationship dynamic in that way. It's such a gift to be able to have that degree of self-honesty and awareness to know that my feelings aren't even my feelings, let alone are they being caused by someone else. Those feelings are just sensations that happen because there's subconscious traumas that are still lodged back in the brain, and you have this amygdala that shoots you full of adrenaline and cortisol when something reminds you of that thing that happened in the past.
Oh man.
When in fact it has no basis in reality.
And that's where it gets so trippy. And I just want to thank you, honey, for acknowledging that about me. And I just want to thank you for the space that you hold. And when I have brought up different wounding moments and different triggering moments, and I say to you how you just explained, you, thankfully, I'm aligning with you at this juncture in your path because you understand all those things you just said about how the brain works. And that's where it gets so trippy with triggering and wounding that hasn't fully been healed, because there's so many layers to healing just one wound, is that if there's a wound that's open and gaping enough, and when I peered into this particular wound that we've worked for me off and on, quite a bit since we've gotten together, when I was working with God on it, the vision of this wound was still really open and gaping, and on the outside it had infection around it. So I knew there's still a lot of work to be done. But when I say that I'm really triggered, you so fully understand then what's happening in my brain. And I'm sharing all this too for everyone listening, that it can get really trippy and tricky in your own head, because those pathways, depending upon how many times you were traumatized in that particular wound, those pathways can really get carved in your brain. So when that wound gets pressed on or stabbed, or like a sword, feels like a sword going through it, your brain kicks into that state and it really does feel real. And these are those really, really pivotal moments where it takes two highly, highly conscious and awake and spiritual people, I think, to navigate these waters in a very healthy, divine way, because the triggers can be so painful and so all-encompassing, and they can swirl you up and sweep you up, and your brain will tell you this is unsafe, this is what's happening. But then to have someone like you on the other side being like, okay, sweetie, so what's happening right now is your amygdala is freaking the fuck out, and I need, or whatever you say to me,
that's what it is.
And then I'm like,
I've interviewed enough neuroscientists because I'm so curious about what happens when you get triggered. What is going on? Why is it so painful? And why can't you get out of it?
Right. Yeah. It sucks you in like a black hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're able to speak to me in a way, and I trust you enough. That's another key piece to our relationship, is somehow innately, or our past lives, or whatever this alchemy is that is you and I in this partnership, is that you have been able to trust me along the way when I am seeing things and aware and sensing things that you're not, and vice versa. So when I'm in that triggered state, I'm able to trust you that this isn't really the real thing that's happening. And then I'm able to have a different dialogue. And I'm like, okay, so help me. Like, what can I do right now? Because this trigger's full on. What can I do right now to calm it a little bit? And then it gets really funny, because when the trigger keeps going, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm still really triggered. But then it's almost like I'm still in the triggered pain, but I'm laughing with it at the same time, because I am starting to then see the absurdity and see that it's just the wound talking, or the pain body that's activated. And anyways, I just think it's important to touch on, because everyone encounters this.
Yeah, it's the way we're wired, because that limbic system in the brain is the center that protects us from danger.
Right.
And so the example I like to give, is I have Cookie, my sweet little pup. Well, actually, our sweet little pup, like it or not now.
I love Cookie.
No, I know you do. And she loves you. But anyone that knows me from years ago, I used to literally say all the time, I hate dogs. I would usually throw in the F word, like I effing hate dogs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, I was just terrorized by dogs on numerous occasions. I got bit on the leg by a German Shepherd once. I still have a big hole in my thigh. I'll show it to you sometimes. And then I got bit on the face by a Rottweiler.
Is that scar?
Uh-huh.
I've always wondered what that scar is.
Yeah, Rottweiler.
Wow, to have a Rottweiler come at your face, that is very traumatizing.
Yeah, you think? So I was like, I hate dogs for the longest time. And so what would happen was anytime I would hear a dog growl, a dog bark, walk by a dog, even though consciously I would know that the dog wasn't going to hurt me, that limbic system would fire because those memories from the past are logged in I think it's your hippocampus. Neuroscientists, let me know if I got this wrong, but I think it's your hippocampus where those memories are stored. Then the amygdala goes to there. Is there anything like this in our past that's similar? Yes. Ding, ding, ding.
No, that's when the emoji, that red siren emoji goes off. And it's like,
yeah. And so even though your logical brain is going, we're safe. That's a freaking, like a Pomeranian. It's not going to hurt. Like I could punt it across the street right now.
That's a teacup Pomeranian.
Yeah, there's no way, or, in the situation we were describing where you're triggered about something and I'm going, honey, everything's fine. Like I'm safe. I'm here for you. And you're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter what the reality is presenting. We don't have control, at least until we learn how to control it and heal those parts of our physical brain and psychic sort of body as well. It's that we don't have control over that, except that we can start to understand how it works.
Right.
And that, for me, is so powerful. So then, now if the dog barks or I walk by a big scary dog, I mean, there's actually an appropriate response. So the limbic system still goes, look out, don't go too close, but my heart doesn't start beating. I don't get that full download of stress chemicals that get me in fight or flight to the point where I can't get out. It's like when you watch an animal in nature, if you're out in the woods and you startle a deer, they get fight or flight, they flight, they get the hell out of there. And then you watch them 10 seconds later, they're just eating grass like nothing ever happened. Like that's the normal animal response for an animal that's not been emotionally harmed.
Right.
And damaged to the point that they have to now go undo it. So we have that capacity to get back to wholeness, but we have to be able to work with one another as humans and communicate the experiences we're having from outside of that experience.
But that's when that deep trust comes in. Because you have to trust someone else that what they're observing.
That they're not manipulating you?
Right. Or any myriad of things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trust that comes into play. And that's also where shamanism and various spiritual practices really are key to transcending these pieces. No, for real. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I remember the one time when you were, I think your most triggered moment, which was just kind of, we could just generalize and say was around trust, and your most triggered moment. And I was going, honey, no. All that's happening is your amygdala is firing and it's filling your body and brain full of stress chemicals, cortisol and adrenaline, and you're just caught in a limbic system loop.
Right.
And you're going, looking at me sort of suspiciously, and you're going, but how do I know you're not manipulating me right now?
Did I say that?
Something to that effect.
I don't remember saying that.
Or saying, like in this situation in the past, someone might have been just, no, honey, you're imagining all of this.
The old paradigm situation for me was being made that I'm crazy. That I'm the crazy one that's imagining all the stuff that I never, FYI, I was never imagining it. I was actually correct. So then it flashes you back. Yeah. But then I have to trust myself. And we talked about this too. At the end of the day, it's really about just trusting me and trusting myself, trusting that I have walked this path and done this work for enough years that I have risen to a plane of existence that the partner that I have called in and that I am now experiencing would be someone that does not operate in that old paradigm way that I used to suffer in. And that's the thing that we one of the things we love so much about our union, the look on your face is really funny right now. I don't know why. But one of the things we love so much about our union is that we came together from a healed whole place. And again, we're not saying we still don't have work to do and things to explore, but where we're at in climbing the mountaintop of ascension and evolution, we got to a high enough place that we came together from being healed, from wholeness, from sovereignty. And because we united from that place and we did not unite in the wound, which we both have lots of experience in the past, that's why one of the reasons why we're able to experience so much joy and laughter and play and silliness and sacredness and all these things, because we're not connecting from the pain body place. We're not connecting and uniting from the wound. We came together from wholeness, from sovereignty, individual sovereignty. We both clicked and landed into that. And then from that place, God, universe, our souls, peyote, all these things were then saying like, ding, da, da, ding, ding, ding. Now it's time. Now they've ascended to this place. Sovereignty, together now. Right?
Mic drop. We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. As much as I try to maintain a healthy diet, there's two things that can take me out on a semi-regular basis in terms of taking me off of my food plan. One is ice cream, for which I've not really found a healthy alternative. The other one is cookies. And if I slip and eat cookies full of refined sugar, gluten, which means they probably have glyphosate if they're made with flour, it's bad news. It does not serve me. But sometimes I do slip because I just get the munchies. You know what I'm saying? I'm human, you guys. Which is why I was super stoked that my sponsor, superfat.com, launched these keto cookie bites and send me a few bags of them. By the way, you folks at Superfat, I'm out of those. I ate those within like 5 minutes of opening the package, no joke. So if you guys ever hear this plug, you know my address, you know what I'm saying? But they sent me these cookies, man. They got chocolate chips, snickerdoodle, peanut butter chocolate chip. They are freaking delicious and they are no guilt. They've got no grains, no gluten. They're keto certified. They're freaking delicious. Just like their nut butters, Superfat kept their cookies free of any fillers or junk or swag. They've only got 3 grams of carbs, 4 grams of protein. They've only got 150 calories per serving and 290 calories per container. You know, personally, I just eat the container. Best of all, though, they've got a lot of healthy fats. They're made with almond and coconut flour, grass-fed butter, and grass-fed collagen. I mean, how could you do it any better? The only thing that I can imagine being any better is if the bags were just bigger so I could pound a pound of them at once, actually. They're really good. So check them out. Superfat.com is the website. That's superfat.com. Of course, I've got a discount for you of 15% by using the code Luke. So use the code Luke at superfat.com and get yourself some keto cookie bites. And now back to the interview. Yeah, I think that's something that's really been interesting to experience is that, that, you know, when you talk about these things, you know, I never want to refer to past relationships specifically. I mean, I'm so grateful to anyone, just on record, anyone I've ever dated in any way in my entire life. God bless you. I love you so much.
All teachers.
Yeah, because it's gotten me to where I am, and I'm grateful for every experience I've ever had, even the ones that were painful.
For sure.
I mean, it's just because it wouldn't be possible to be where I am now as an individual or have the capacity for relating that I have now had I not been through so many different experiences.
Correct.
And so, like all challenges in my life, I'm so grateful for them, even though they were at times difficult. But it's, this tendency that we humans have to feel a pull or an attraction to a dynamic that's unhealthy because it's familiar. Correct. You know, my friend Neil Strauss, he calls this trauma bonding, you know, where you have the same wounds in your past and they become like a key and a lock and they just fit perfectly together, and you meet someone and you have these fireworks. And I think that's that kind of like addictive excitement where you're just like, oh my God.
You think?
Did they text me back yet? It's only been 30 seconds. What's going on? You know, like that craziness that I've experienced so many times in relationships. And, you know, this is after studying really at depth love addiction and codependency and all of these things that are a result of childhood trauma and us having broken bonds with our caregivers and things like that, and our caregivers having broken bonds with one another, and betrayals and abandonment and abuse and all of the things so many humans have a tendency to experience, that we meet someone and that familiarity is so intoxicating. Even though our logical mind might say, like, don't do it, bad idea. We're compelled. I'm speaking from my own experience, and I've observed in others, I think, compelled to move forward with it, even though it's the broken parts of you that are fitting together like puzzle pieces.
Right.
And you haven't become in love with yourself in the most positive, humble sense. And I think before we met, I had experiences in Costa Rica and ceremonies that really connected me to my own heart. And just, I found my center and my home within myself, and that self-love and that deep self-acceptance, to where even though I had the desire to be in a relationship and I want to have that union and that intimacy and the the sharing of love and all the things that a great healthy relationship has, I think I really did had to get to a point where I was totally capable of giving that to myself.
Yes.
And I couldn't let another truly in the depths of my heart until I let myself in my heart.
Another mic drop.
Yeah.
And that's the place that I was getting to, and my own self too. And one of the questions that I wrote down, because I was your makeshift printer for the questions today, I saw one of the questions.
Which I've totally ignored.
Yeah, I know we're going off the rails here. But one of the questions in there was, how did I learn how to be in a healthy relationship when all those years I was just on my own? Right? Because for those who don't know, go to, my backstory, go to episode 111. I think I share some of this there, but my divine intervention, spiritual awakening came from a very trying past relationship. That was the instrument that catalyzed that moment for me where my entire life changed. And from that point, I was really for many, many years, consciously single, and for many years, celibate. And so, yeah, I just thought it was curious that you posed that, how by yourself, how did you learn to land to a place in a healthy relationship now, when I was navigating those waters after my awakening day just on my own? And it's really what you just said. It was me just growing every day, and my ability to so fully and truly have self-love, self-respect, self-honor, self-sacredness, all of those pieces, that I got to a place. Now, this is after basically for 5 whole years being completely celibate. At this point,
that's a crime against humanity.
I don't disagree. But I will say that somehow I think I got gridded with spiritual microchips that just knew it was going to be a part of my path. And I somehow was able to do it. And it wasn't somehow that crazily agonizing. But at times it was, but not overall. So it was me just learning to love myself so deeply that I actually got to a place. Now, I really wanted my king, and I really wanted this sacred partnership. And there's still a part of me that thinks if it's in the cards and meant to be, I want to also experience being a mother and all of those things. So it's like I wanted to call in my sacred partnership, and I believed it was true. Because I'm so devoted to this path, I was like, I'm going to have to meet someone who's on my consciousness level. And I go all the way in deep and hard, like every day with this. So it's got to be someone who also devotes their life to this. While I believed it was possible and that there was a man out there that could hold the proper space for me that I wanted, I also just got to a place where I had another surrender moment specifically around this piece. And I just thought, you know what? I'm so at home within my own body. I'm so at home within my own being. And I truly unconditionally love myself so much. If it's my path and it's just meant to be that I'm just riding solo for the rest of my life. And if I'm supposed to be celibate, like, wow, I wouldn't have guessed this for myself. But okay, And it was, the irony is that so many times when we have these surrender moments, it's like we try to manifest and call these things in and manifest and call these things in and do all of this, like, magnetizing and all of these things. And then it's like you surrender and then all of a sudden, boop, it's there, and that's happened time and time and time again for me. And that's what happened in this situation. The last little nugget I will say is, it's just because I was celibate and really wasn't dating, don't think that I wasn't tested or challenged, because when I made the decision that I wanted to be in partnership again, I felt like I was ready to call in the final relationship for me this lifetime. I was like, okay, I've got to do something different. I don't leave my house much, so I need to get on these dating apps. So I had to do a healing session around dating apps, because when I was a TV host, I was the one who would go on the dating app segments, and I was the host that would say, this is like, it's online shopping for humans. And I was very against it. So I did a healing session to transcend that belief. And only after that, then I uploaded a couple of apps. And in the couple of dating experiences I had, I got presented right away with tests and challenges of that thing you just described, of the meeting of when the wounds... Trauma bonding. And there was one in particular that, like, oh my God, it was so clear what was going on, but it was painted in such a glorious picture. I mean, penthouses were involved, and just, like these external things that were very, very enticing and very sparkling. But the deeper part of my soul knew, I was like, this is that thing again, Alyson. You have to hold the line. And I got taken into a weekend of really deep work. I had to phone a friend on this one. I had to phone my oldest best friend, Nikki, from back in Indiana, because she knows the whole journey for me. And I was like, this is what I'm experiencing. And she was just like, Alyson, this is the addiction piece. That's who this is. This is that representation for you. You have to keep holding the line and walking through the portal. And by me staying strong and fighting that addiction urge and that trauma bonding urge and holding the line, it was literally, I was watching myself this weekend, that weekend, walking through an energetic portal. And by me staying strong and staying so heightened, consciously aware, and not texting back and not engaging and not reverting back into that old portal, I popped out into a new one. And it was not long after that you and I all of a sudden started to have these different conversations, which I feel like we should really talk about. Let's quit talking about ourselves and let's talk about how we got together as a couple. That's what they're really here for anyways. They just want to know, well, how did we fall in love? When did this happen?
Well, it's as funny as we're sitting here talking. It's like, it reeks of like honeymoon phase, because we're like, it's sort of like, oh, we have this all figured out. We're good. And I just want to say, like, we're not, like there's always going to be a certain type of effort or work in a relationship. Yeah. And I think that where I was misguided often, when you hear people say, which they say a lot, oh, relationships are work, man, you got to work on it. I thought that you just always are going to have conflict. You always end up in therapy. You always have drama. You're always going to be fighting. And then
that kind of work.
Yeah, you're with a person to like bring out the worst parts of yourself, bring them to the surface so then you can work on them. And I've experienced that. And I think I am just celebrating that our work is more in how can we make a relationship a meditation? It's like, can the work be how unconditionally can we love? Can the work be how much personal responsibility can we take for our own shit, our own feelings, the way that our mind is perceiving a situation?
Yes.
Can we ask ourselves, is what I'm experiencing and projecting on this person true or not? And be brutally honest with ourselves as to what the answer to that question is. So I acknowledge that it's a work, but it's a different type of work. And it's a work that I haven't done before. It's work of, can I stay off my phone and just look you in the eyes and be willing to just sit there with you. You know what I mean?
Or it's me, it's the work where I get really funny and like, I like to get, sometimes like a little pouty and I'm like, no, but I don't want to do this or whatever. And then I love when you remind me, you say that thing of, it's about how quick can we get back to love. And sometimes I just like to be in that other little pod where I'm like, no, pet me and coddle me. I'm over here sulking. And then you're like, but you don't let me stay in that really kind of pointless or very long. And I love that because it is true. It's, I just don't want to wallow in that other space when I'm with you. You're just like, no, like it's time to get back to right here, right back to love. You don't ever let me go over there and stay over there very long. You let me just do whatever for a little bit. And you're like, all right, enough. Get over here. It's so funny.
I've learned so much doing this podcast and having conversations with people. And I've interviewed a couple couples. One of them, Aubrey Marcus, and his former partner, Whitney. And they ended up breaking up. But that interview was about like their open relationship and their very non-traditional way of relating. And that wasn't a model that I was interested in pursuing.
Yeah, that one
at that
just
point.
gave me full body like, no, thank you.
It wasn't, wasn't a model I was interested in pursuing personally, but it was an interesting conversation.
Right.
But I did admire their willingness and ability to really walk through some super painful stuff together around that, what that brought up. And I was like, good for you. That ain't my path. Like, I don't want to suffer that much. But I interviewed another couple, Nick Broadhurst and Melissa Ambrosini.
Right.
And it was kind of the conversation was around their relationship. And they were talking about conflict resolution. And they said that they had a kind of a motto in their relationship that something like this. It was, no good ever comes from closing your heart. Or even just closing. No good ever comes from closing. And all of us have that protective mechanism of like threatened, hurt, pissed. I'm going to shut down, punish you, just stay in my own shit and sulk.
Yeah.
It's like literally nothing good ever comes from closing. It's so true and it's so simple. So my personal practice and what you're describing is, even if I think, oh my God, she is being so ridiculous right now. What a bitch. Like, are you serious? Like, you're blaming me for this? That all the thoughts that go in my head. Or yesterday when you were having that, it was like, none of your business. This is my shit. Stay out of my...
What are you talking about with yesterday?
You were giving me unsolicited career advice because you were triggered by the way I was handling a situation around an email. See, it was so insignificant. It went away.
An email?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, that. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Okay, that was funny. Yeah. I'm trying to change the world here. That was what was coming up. I was like, you can't play a role in this. You've got to change the world with me. Yeah. Okay, got it.
It was around... It was around people in our industry being fairly compensated and the type of deals that we engage in and the global effect on them when we sell ourselves short.
I was like, don't perpetuate the old cycle. You've got to say no. You've got to stand up and you've got to go the new way with me. Right. Yeah. I was very strong in that.
I had thoughts arise that were like, I didn't ask your opinion. And like that could have turned into a fight. But I have that mantra, no good ever comes, which would be closing my heart, which would be not allowing you to have your experience and acknowledging that there was something in there that you found a trigger in that was worth exploring.
Yeah.
Or just holding space and just being compassionate for you having that experience and opening my mind to the fact, or to the idea, maybe she's right. Maybe there's something here for me to see that I'm not seeing rather than being defensive.
Right.
But whatever was going on, closing and meeting that with resistance and not holding space for that would be so dumb and unproductive. So, what a great and simple lesson that is to just remain open-hearted. And even if you don't agree, there's always a way to work it out without closing. In other words, you can still express a negative emotion. You can still disagree, but you can do so without closing your heart.
Yeah.
You can practice unconditional love, which means like, I love you, even if I think you're being completely out of line and ridiculous. I love you more now than ever in your ridiculousness.
I had some really good points though. So let's not play like
that's where the open-minded consideration of, okay, she's coming to the table with this idea and this response from an emotional triggered point of view, but let's not let that discount the truth that might be behind it.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of validity to what you were bringing up, regardless of whether or not I asked you for your opinion or, whether or not you were overreacting or wouldn't let the damn thing go when I already said, okay, I get it. I'll look at it, or, trying to make you see my side and you didn't understand and all this shit,
Yeah.
So it's in that just to say that it's so fun to really work with you on the things that come up in the relationship, and that the work it's a great kind of work because it allows me to expand more into love and into truth and to get through the falsehoods much more quickly because we're both willing to do that.
Correct.
So back to your point of our somewhat strange and unconventional journey to becoming a couple.
From brother to boyfriend.
Yeah, from brother to boyfriend. Your next book, and we're going to talk about your book project and other things too, because I talk about those things to all my guests. But I remember when, as I said, when I met you, I mean, you're a gorgeous woman. Obviously, I acknowledge that. Wow, that's a really pretty woman to have on the podcast. There was all that, but professionalism, where I was in life, you lived in New York, all that. And so we had a great time during that conversation and remained friends and would run into each other at events and even, I think, text here and there every once in a while and things like that. And, still keeping everything on the up and up. And for me, I didn't like the idea of dating someone that lived in New York City when I lived in LA. I tried that and I found it to be really challenging, just proximity. It's difficult. So even at points in which I was single and saw you as a possible viable date or potential partner, etc., there was no point in engaging with you on that level because, why? It's not going to go anywhere. She lives in New York, so why even entertain that and perhaps ruin a friendship and just date when she comes out here? It was just dumb. But there was one point at which I was single, and I don't know that I was that ready to start dating again, but you were here and the opportunity arose, so we went to coffee. And I'm sitting across from you.
Well, let's be clear. I don't drink coffee. I was having tea. I've been off coffee for about 4 years. But anyways,
unfortunately, yes. It's one thing we can't share a love of. You have your matcha here.
That is correct.
Yeah, your little dirty matcha cups everywhere. The matcha
looks
cups,
like swamp water.
It does.
Here.
Swamp water with lipstick all over it.
Yeah, that's my style.
But in the interest of being honest and transparent, which is just a growth practice for me. It's just something I like to be more honest and forthright without any agenda whatsoever. We were sitting there and I just thought, I'm getting more information here that's indicating to me that there might be the possibility of dating this woman because you had said to me in the course of that conversation or in texting or whenever it was, I'm sure you remember the details better than I do. But it was communicated to me that you were in the process of moving to LA.
Correct.
And I was like, oh, whoa, that changes everything because that was kind of a non-negotiable for me. And so when we were at tea/coffee, what did I say to you? Because you'll remember and I won't. I'll remember the sentiment that was like, hey, I'm just going to be straight up. This is what's on my mind. And I expressed what was on my mind.
Well, yeah, I had texted you to let you know I was going to be, because I've been bi-coastal for a while and I would usually give you a heads up just to say hi or whatever. And so I said, yeah, I was coming into town. And you asked me in that text, you said, what are you coming into town for? And I said, actually, just life. I'm officially moving to LA. I made that clear decision. And so this is the first trip ever where I'm not filming my show. I'm not taking any work meetings. None of that is happening. I'm just coming there to activate my life. And so I think that was probably maybe unconsciously or consciously when some layers started to open up in you. And then, in this conversation at this hotel where I was just working from one day when you came to meet me for this tea/coffee, after the first portion of the conversation, which was a totally different tone and subject matter, you then went from sitting next to me on the booth side to pivoting to the other side of the table into a standalone chair. And I'm holding Cookie on her leash, your dog, and I remember thinking, what's happening right now? Why is he getting up and moving to the other side of the table? Why are we repositioning here? What's occurring? I remember being very conscious of this movement, and you really took a second to kind of get yourself set again, and get reset within your being. And I could feel and see different vulnerability energy starting to open up from behind your eyes and different emotions starting to get evoked. And then that's when you said something to me to the effect of, well, you know, I've always been interested in you, right? You said something like that. And then I at this point was totally shocked and was silent. And then I can kind of see your face. You turned your head to the side a little bit and you were like, did you know that? And then that's when I said to you, no, had no idea. And I was feeling so many things at this point because I'm looking at you and you're just such a beautiful human and such a beautiful man. And you had such honesty glistening in your eyes and your soul was really exuding through. So I'm really seeing this like vulnerability and I'm really in tune with that and wanting to honor that. Yet at the same time in my being, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on right now? What did he just say what I think he said? And so like I'm experiencing all these different energetics and emotions simultaneously. And I don't even remember. Now, this is where I completely blank. I don't remember what happened after that. I know that we talked for a little bit more before you needed to go, and I walked you outside for you to get your car. But I don't remember how we wrapped the conversation. I think we just kind of left it at like, because I didn't say back to you, oh, I've always been interested. I did not say anything back like that. I do recall that. I think I was more just shell-shocked and trying to process. So I didn't really give you anything to work with. I didn't say back like, oh, I've been feeling the same way or anything. I was still processing. Do you recall anything else that was said?
Well, I know that my intention was just to express my truth and I didn't want to be inauthentic and I just wanted to let it known. In other words, like I wasn't attached to the outcome of it. It was just a performance that I had to give in order to feel free of that. And even if you had been like, oh, I'm dating someone now, or like, I just want to be friends, it wasn't even about that. It wasn't about the result. It was just about like, hey, I just want this to be known. Like, okay, like, now she knows I'm kind of crushing on her and we can move on with life and not be awkward. But I think that it was kind of like, well, let's go grab a bite sometime or something. I think there was like, well, let's do something at some point.
Okay.
Date-ish.
Okay.
I think.
I have no idea.
And then, I mean, the funny thing about this, I think, and we could probably tell it in a shorter version, leaving out some of the minutia. But I think what's really interesting about it is from that moment, things just started to move on their own.
Yes.
And I had this framework or structure of how I think this is supposed to go when you want to enter into a successful, healthy, long-term relationship, which is really taking your time to get to know someone, which is something that I didn't do in my younger years and often ended up in relationships that were misaligned because they weren't very well thought out and weren't entered into with much consciousness or awareness and no plan, just like feels good, run, 0 to 100 kind of thing. And so having had some of those experiences and seeing, that pattern doesn't really work out for anyone. So I'm, going to take everything slow and just go 1950s old school, like find a nice gal and court her for a while, take her on some nice dates, open the car door, take it slow, no sex, just like, really get to know someone as a friend.
Duke was starting to come out there a little bit.
Yeah, old Duke's talking about how you do relationships.
You were whistling your S's anyways.
I'll get to it.
I really like when he turns into Duke. It's one of my favorites. I'm Mary Sue, if y'all don't know that yet.
But I really, I think with us, there was one thing at play is that we had, a relationship of sorts beforehand. And we were friendly and we were friends, although we didn't, hang out all the time. We had some rapport and we knew a bit about one another. So it wasn't like we just met that day and then next thing you know, we're moving in together. But I had this idea of going really slow. And then also, though, I was really interested in you because you're just a stellar person and all of the reasons that I keep explaining. And so I invited you you were going to be here for New Year's Eve. So I invited you to my annual Kundalini yoga party with my teacher, Tage, and all my friends, which I felt was it was kind of a big ask. It's also your birthday. And, and you're kind of you've not really even been on an official date with someone, asking them to like give up their New Year's Eve and their birthday and come hang out with you and your friends was kind of a big ask. And when you took a couple days and then said, yeah, I'm going to do it, I was like, oh shit, okay, that's
shit's getting on and popping now.
Yeah. And then I just had such a lovely time with you. And I remember being there with you and I was like, are you okay? And you're like, dude, I love Kundalini yoga. I've been doing this for years. And I was like, what? Oh, awesome. That's such a great thing to be able to share with a partner because it's been such a instrumental part of my awakening and something I really enjoy. It just feels so amazing to do that. And then I remember giving you a quick kiss, which was our first kiss of the new year.
That was the official pivot from brother to something else, not to boyfriend yet, but I was wondering if that was going to happen because the ball drops, all those cliche quintessential things about New Year's Eve and I could feel something new conjuring. I just want to be completely honest. When you expressed that you were interested in me, this was not something that I just jumped into. I had reservations because I think I felt closer to you throughout the years, maybe than you did me. Like I had you on my show and you moderated a panel I was on and we did keep in touch and have some conversations. And so I've really valued you as a friend and someone that I loved. And so I got nervous. What if we explore these waters and one of us ends up liking the other way more than the other? Or what if we both really like each other, but our kissing and our sex is horrible? I had all these fears coming up that made me very cautious to enter fully into this new river, this new current that had become opened via your transparency and vulnerability at the hotel that day by expressing your interest. So there have been really cool moments along the way where you were the expander for us, where you opened up this new field of possibility. And then I give myself credit for also you open up this shamanic field and I'm like, oh, sniff around in there, look around in there. I'm like, that actually looks and smells pretty good. Okay. And then I step into that field and then we go over here and you're like, how about New Year's Eve? I know it's the start of a new decade and the start of a new year and it's your birthday the next day, but you want to spend that night with me? And I took about 5 days of sniffing into that one. I was like, oh, this is a big deal. This is a big decision, because, with me with energetics, I'm like, it's really important. Who am I sharing space with, especially to start a new decade and to start my birthday with? I'm like, who do I want to share that space with energetically? So after about 5 days of sniffing into that field that you opened up, I was like, yeah, that field's actually smelling pretty good. What's going on here? I'm going to step into this field. And it was, I remembered wondering, because we had not been physical at all. We had had a couple of what I would consider dates of me hanging out over here and then hanging out with Rosie and Tori and looking back, realizing that was actually our first double date, but we didn't know it at the time. And we had spent some time together in this new current, but we had not even touched each other really. I could just feel very, very gradually an attraction growing because I'd had that completely shut off from you in years past. I only looked at you as my friend. So even though you're really attractive, I wasn't seeing you through that lens. So in this new current, me starting to expand into this other things that were possible was really pretty slow moving in the beginning. And so I remembered wondering, I wonder if he's going to kiss me when the ball drops. But then you vanished. This is a hilarious part of this story. So it's about to be my birthday. I haven't even told you this yet. This is some real juice for the listeners. You don't even know this part yet. This is so exciting. So it's about to be my birthday, right? When the ball drops, when it turns midnight, the world begins to celebrate for me and my birthday, right? And a couple minutes before it turns midnight, Luke disappears, everyone.
That's because when they're dancing.
No. So the balloons drop. We've been doing Kundalini stuff. There's wizards everywhere. All this amazing stuff's going on. 2 minutes before, no sign of Luke. And I'm like, this is this funny story that my head started conjuring. I've yet to tell you this. Because in my mind, I'm like, what's going on? Why is he not going to be here for this moment at midnight? This is so weird to me. What could he be doing? So in my mind, I'm like, well, first of all, I'm like, surely he'll come back. That was the first one. But then I realized that wasn't happening because the balloons were dropping. And then the next story that I conjured, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my birthday. I bet he's out there getting a cake ready. I told myself that you were probably back there like putting candles in a cake, and that when it turned midnight, you were going to come in and like give me a birthday cake. And I was conjuring really rapidly all these hilarious narratives, none of which proved to be true. And so then finally at like 5 or 10 after midnight, you come just sauntering back in, like, nonchalant. And I'm like, what the heck? This is such an odd mystery. Thank God I remember feeling, I was grateful that you took the pressure off that having to kiss at that moment though. Because I didn't really think I wanted it to happen that way of like feeling forced because it's midnight and because it suddenly turned a new year that we're supposed to kiss now. So then we did. So I remembered being happy that you released the pressure valve on that moment. But then, 10 minutes later, when you did walk back in, I was standing and you did walk over to me. And I remember you put both your hands on my arms and you said, let me give you your first kiss of the decade. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it was just like literally like a half-second peck. But that was a big moment because we had never done anything like that.
It would have been so weird to just try to make out with you right then.
In front of everybody, yeah.
Like bridging the friend zone is, it's probably happened before. I can't think of a time.
I've never done it.
But it's interesting.
Really
but now
weird.
I remember what I did.
Yeah, where were you? I still don't know the answer to this.
When I was not preparing your cake, which would have been a great move.
Right.
When they do the ball drop at the Santa Monica Women's Center thing, which I've been to a few years now, it's amazing because you can go up on the balcony.
Okay.
And it's a great place to live stream.
Oh my God, you guys, he went up to get on Instagram.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Case in point, I guess, why. Oh, this is Jelly Bean. I want everyone to meet my cat. I know you can't see him when you're listening on the podcast, but
Dude,
for this,
Jellington right here.
This is Jelly. His birthday's coming up. He's going to be 13, and he's been my little mini Black Panther, my little spirit animal for many years. He's seen me pre-awakening and post-awakening. He's seen mommy through everything. So thank you for coming and saying hi. Luke calls him Grumple Stiltskin because he's very vocal and he can be a bit of a grumpy cat, which I find hilarious. But even then when I picked him up, he's like, Rawr! And so Grumple Stiltskin is one of his nicknames.
He's a grumpy old man.
He's so great though.
Yeah.
He's very smart.
He and Cooks are buds. They're like Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, it's really cute. So this is hilarious. This makes the story even funnier that I thought you were preparing a cake for me and you were live streaming on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm just like, whatever. She can be down there. I got to go live stream.
I've got to go live stream. My audience needs me.
It's a great shot, man. You can't miss the shot.
No, you really can. But so with the other interesting pivotal thing that happened at this New Year's Eve event, which I feel is important to bring up, is in between all of these Kundalini activations that we were doing, during one of the breaks, you pivoted and sat in front of me and you said, I'm going to do your medicine soon. Because when I had come over here to hang out, we were just catching up. And I was sharing with you some of the really, really life-changing experiences I had had working with a sacred plant medicine. And you knew the one that just speaks to my soul the deepest at this juncture in my life. And so that night at New Year's Eve, you said, I'm going to do your medicine soon. And then in my mind, my first question is, well, who are you going to sit with? Because that's of utmost importance. Like, who is facilitating? And you said, it's the funniest thing. I ran into my friend Sanjay, and you started to continue with the sentence. But right when you said Sanjay's name, I was like, what? And I said, you're sitting with my teachers. You're sitting with my shamanic soul family, because Sanjay is in my shamanic soul family. And we have been together in these experiences. And so the second you said his name, I just knew something really otherworldly was starting to conjure, because the fact that you were getting looped in to my shamanic family and starting to get pulled into these kinds of practices without me orchestrating it, the fact that the medicine was and God was and just this bigger picture now was at orchestration. And that is that current that you were referring to earlier of how once this new pathway was opened, this other energy system has been working us. We've not been doing the orchestration.
Damn straight. Because like I was beginning to allude to, I had a very specific linear plan, like a very male way of doing things, which is like, okay, I've done these plans. Those blueprints did not get the desired result of the finished building I wanted to build. And so this time I have this blueprint and I'm going to follow this in a very logical, linear way. It's called like How to Build a Healthy Relationship 101. Like we're going to follow the plan. Mm-hmm. And that plan didn't include going off to the desert and doing peyote and becoming a couple in one weekend.
I wish I had my rattle. It's right out there. I had it in here. I would be rattled.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, just the synchronicity and how the universe works in such mysterious ways, is that I don't even know Sanjay that well. We've met a few times. I'm a huge fan of one of his musical projects called Feather and Dot. I use their music in my workshops, and it's amazing Kundalini mantra music, very modern and awesome. Unlike some of the cornier Kundalini mantra music, no offense, but some of it is pretty janky. But he lives in LA, but he lives elsewhere also and stuff like that. But one day I ran into him. I just gotten back from Costa Rica to go to Soltara, which I've done podcasts about before. And I ran into him at Tage at Nine Treasures Yoga. And I said, I just got back from Costa Rica. I was doing some medicine work down there. It was amazing. Huge transformations, awakenings, healings, etc. And he's like, oh, no way. Have you ever done peyote? And I said, no. He said, well, it's my birthday next weekend or whenever it was. And, these my teachers are going to be on their kind of tour. And if you want to come sit, come along. And that was, what I explained to you. And of course it was Oscar and Vivian, who, by the way, those listening, there will be an episode that I already recorded with said guides, Oscar and Vivian, amazing couple that really were at the forefront of this relationship developing.
For sure.
As energy workers, medicine keepers, and as models for a really beautiful, sacred, aligned relationship.
100%. So I texted you because I wanted to hold energetic space for you. And so it pinged in. I'm back in Brooklyn at this point. And I just texted you and said, hey, can you remind me what weekend is the ceremony? And truly, because I'm honest about everything, I was genuinely just wanting to know so that while you were in that zone, I could just hold space for you. Because I knew it was your first time going into that particular kind of ceremony with that medicine, even though you've traversed many others. So when you saw that text, you sent the date, and then the next, I think it was like an hour or two later, you came in with this other expander question, another expander pivotal point, taking me into a new field. You said few simple words. Why? Do you want to come? And I had not even, because I had just gotten back to New York. So I was not thinking at all about, even though I love Oscar and Vivian to the utmost, I wasn't going to fly right back. But when you asked me that, I thought, why not? Yeah, I do want to go. I love Oscar and Vivian. Their tour's wrapping up soon. I love Sanjay. It's his birthday. I want to keep exploring all of this incredible alchemy that's so clearly happening with you and I. I'm manifesting my move to LA anyways. Like there's literally, I got up a sheet of paper out and I wrote the pros and cons.
For real?
Yeah, I made a list and there was just literally no reason for me to stay in Brooklyn. And there were all the reasons for me to get another plane ticket right then and fly right back the next day. And that's what I did. And I just love that our first trip that we ever took together was loading up the car with all of the tools you need for a ceremony, the ponchos, and just because we knew we were going to be in a desert and we needed to really be prepared because it was going to be cold. We would be in a teepee and just loading up the car together. And our first trip ever together was going out to sacred lands in a desert to sit together and sacred ceremony with my shamanic family and my teachers. You cannot make this stuff up, and you could not have written a better script for the love story that is, what, in my opinion, on my side over here, it could not have been scripted better because I had been praying for that for years. It had always been my ultimate vision to sit with my sacred divine partner, to sit next to my king in a sacred ceremony, doing that kind of evolutionary work, that kind of sacred work together, to me, that is the highest vision. So to be having that manifesting so quickly, it just was really mind-blowing and beyond special to me.
And that was one of those situations where I really had to follow my intuition and not my logic, because logically, sharing that experience with someone that I think we'd been on one official date at that point. I took you to dinner at Pache before that, I think, right?
I don't even remember if it was before.
I remember like we had hung out, but they weren't really dates. Like I'm like, I really want to take you on a date and treat you like a lady and like do the thing. We're dating now, you know? I mean, not exclusively, because at that point I thought, well, we're probably still going to date other people and see how things come together. And eventually you'll move out here and then we'll see how it goes. And I had this kind of plan together, you know. I was hoping it would work out. But it was kind of a move for me where we were at that point to share that kind of depth of an experience with someone who we're just kind of testing the waters. We're not a couple per se, right?
Yeah, no, we did not go into the desert as a couple. We left the desert as a couple. But we did not head into the sacred grounds that way.
That was where my head was like, is this a good idea, Luke? Should you be doing it this way? Does this really make sense? And I had to just be like, shut up, brain. Like, this feels right. The 51% of me is leaning like, this would be cool. Like, if there's a way to get to know someone, this is a pretty good way to do it.
Oh, it doesn't get any more vulnerable than that.
Yeah. And so ensued a 2-day, 2-night ceremony. My first time ever sitting with that medicine. And, that's a whole other podcast, as I said, coming out. It's a medicine that I've been drawn to 6 times total now at this point at the time of this recording. And every time I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't like this stuff.
And you say you'll never do it again.
Yeah. And then, I get awakenings and realizations, and the biggest one being the realization of, wow, we're a thing, which is, it's almost hard to explain and tell the story because it just enters into the mystical realms, and
miracles.
It's a non-linear thing. But essentially, I think for me, it was you having had experience with those teachers, that tribe, and in that experience, it had a certain depth and sacredness to you that it didn't have to me yet.
Correct.
To me, it's like, wow, this is an interesting date to have with someone for a couple days. It's kind of a fast move forward for me, because where are we going to sleep? Do we sleep in the same bed? We weren't intimate in any way really at that point. And even for some time afterward.
Right.
And so it's, like, I'm trying to do the right thing here, goddammit, and go slow and like be healthy and like chill and like really take my time.
But the one thing that took a little pressure off that piece is I work with all of facets of my shamanic work and path with the utmost sacredness and integrity. And you need to be celibate leading up to ceremony and in the days after. And so I had expressed that to you before I even got the plane ticket. I just wanted to get that out of the way, even though we had not been intimate yet. I just wanted to remind you, like, look, even though I'm flying back out there, I work with medicine and with shamanism in this way. I know you know that, but I'm just going to reiterate, you are to be celibate before and after, and that will 100% be how I roll. So that took some of that.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, is your plane ticket refundable?
Right. You got a lulz on that one.
So
it really did make me laugh. That was a good one. Honey.
So it's the story of the ceremony itself is just so otherworldly, but there are, Oscar and Vivian are leading it. They have this beautiful, high-level spiritual relationship and a deep love that's just palpable. I mean, you get around them and you just go, oh my God. My experience is like, whatever they're doing, I want that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of relationship I want. Just so reverent and deep and fun. And just the way that they interweave their work together and the way their energies balance one another. It's just really, really amazing to be in that space with them. Add to that the mystical peyote button, these freaking cactuses that you eat that taste like,
be nice,
that taste beautiful,
be reverent,
and taste holy and sandy.
It's very sandy,
bitter and chewy. But in the medicine, from my point of view, this is what happened. Like, every time I do that medicine, I'm like looking at my watch, like, is this working? Is anything happening here? Nope, I don't think so. Just feel kind of annoyed, tired, my back hurts, feel pretty nauseous, and like, wow, okay, really? And then I surrender into that resistance and surrender into the resistance and surrender into the resistance. But anyway, during this two night ceremony, there were a number of different micro ceremonies within the macro ceremony, where couples had the opportunity to share in those ceremonies together, a flower blessing, different moments at which you're kind of paired off. To me, we're there and we're together, not together, but we're there, male and female, potential couple, dating-ish, on a date of sorts. And there's these these experiences that we went through that I just kind of, I'm under the medicine. I don't really know what's going on. I've never done it before. I'm all just kind of figuring this out and taking it as it comes. And so we participated in some of these things. And in those micro ceremonies, which I kind of agreed us into and led us into, those had much deeper meaning for you than they did for me. And they were indicators to you that, holy shit, this guy's really stepping up. And like, he's taking us into the realm
taking the lead into that.
Into coupleship. And I'm like thinking, we're going to keep dating for a while. She's going back to New York. Like, this is just...
And you're just tired in the teepee and you're just like, oh, it's our turn.
Yeah. And so, anyway, so we go through that, and then
I'm laying in the bed and you're in the shower, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please, when he gets back into this bedroom, please don't let him say to me, I am so exhausted, I've got to go to bed right away, because I knew I needed to talk to you. And I had been clearly shown, the medicine had so clearly shown me when we got back to our Airbnb. So you sit in ceremony, for those that don't know, from like 9 or 10 at night, and then you are up and sitting upright. Well, it depends on who's facilitating and all that. But we sit up and sit upright all night. And then when the sunrise happens, you go out and connect. But then there's this sharing circle that can sometimes last for hours in the teepee. And then there's like communal food. So we didn't get back to our Airbnb until like very late in the afternoon the next day. And the medicine had spoken to me when I had private time back at our Airbnb. It had so clearly shown me 3 specific points that I needed to bring up with you. And they were on the crunchier side, as I like to call it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I could feel this was going to kind of be a game-changing moment for us, because this was going to be some challenging stuff to bring up to you. And I remembered being scared that when you got out of the shower, you're going to be too tired to talk. And I knew I needed to get this out of my system. So thank God, when you got back into the bed, you go, you said you didn't share in the sharing circle. Why? How was your night?
And everyone shares I don't think every once in a while someone will pass because they're just, in a different space. But yeah, I was like, oh, that was weird. Why was your share omitted? Right.
And I was like, funny, you should ask. I've got some things I need to talk to you about, not share in the sharing circle. So yeah, I then said to you, I think that there were a few things that I needed to bring up that I had been in observance of during the ceremony that just felt really vital to ask you about. And there were things that, had I not been in a heightened conscious state, or had I not been a very consciously aware, awake person, some of these things in the past would have probably slipped under the radar. Like pre-awakening, I probably would have blinded myself to these signs because I wouldn't have wanted to face these difficult conversations or to possibly hear the answer that would come from these conversations. And yet that's not who I am anymore. And I knew I needed to go there. And there was, I won't get into the full minutia, but there was the one that just keeps pinging in for me to share is during the water blessing, how, Vivian was aware, Vivian and Oscar, again, is a facilitator couple, and she was aware that we came, together. And she was seeing things about us that I think we weren't even seeing at this point, just the power of us together. So when she got to, you were sitting to my left, she did the water blessing for you first. When she got to me, she did the water blessing, and she was about to move on. She started to move to the person sitting to my right, but then something stopped her, and she paused. And she said to us, so are you two a couple? And at that moment, I then looked to you to together discern what our response would be. And as I looked to you, you remained with your eyes shut. And that was beyond just like symbolic, that was saying a lot to me, that when this question of, are we a couple, was being posed to us by the shamanic facilitator, the leader of the ceremonies, asking us, you kept your eyes closed to the topic, to the subject matter. And I thought, I can't ignore that. He's closing himself off to this question. He's closing himself off to this possibility and sleeping this question. So that was one of the 3 peyote bullet points that I was advised to bring up with you. And I have to give you so much credit. I give us both credit for just doing any of this, but then that was the game-changing moment, because that's the thing we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. It's those precise moments where the person can get defensive. And you did the complete opposite. You leaned in energetically and physically. You laid over, I was laying in the bed and you laid over my legs and you leaned into me. And you were so genuine and so thoughtful and just so connected in this process. You didn't flinch. You didn't get weird. You didn't get defensive. And you were so willing right away to explore what I had observed that you were unaware of. And that's such a testament to where you are on the path and just as a human. And you being willing to have this kind of level of conversation with me in the way, in the capacity that you were. That's then when my mind got blown. And I thought, oh my God, this is what I've been praying for. And it was through, and then I'll let you take it from here. It was through the discussion of this that then you partly had to watch the piece that doesn't want to be in discomfort, which you acknowledged a few days ago on a walk. That was slightly at play. And then the bigger piece of you that's just, goes beyond logic, just goes into that intuitive sense of you saying then to me, well...
Yeah, it's, I think what I was up against in that interaction was, again, the analytical, logical mind trying to make sense of something that you can't make sense out of, because where that ceremony had taken us in your experience and where you saw me kind of not being there with you, and you're going like, what? Why don't answer the question? Your eyes are closed, and all these kind of things. The realization there was, there's something going on here with this woman that is on a different level that you can't figure out with your brain. And that there's a time frame and a structure here that is currently being built as we're having this conversation that you can't figure out, and there's no right way to do this. And so in that was that really trusting my heart and my intuition and having to discard the safety net of a structure that I had built, which again would have been like, we're going away, we're friends, we kind of know each other, we're getting to know each other, we're going on kind of a weekend date together, not as a couple, as two people that are pursuing dating, getting to know one another. Then in this ceremony, there's these incredibly spiritually bonding, sacred, very meaningful experiences that meant something to you that I was totally oblivious to. And when they were brought to my attention in that conversation, I had to have the open-mindedness and the compassion for you. Like, oh my God, shit, that really sucks that you're kind of there open, this beautiful woman who's not afraid, who doesn't have this analytical framework of how this is supposed to go. But you're like, whoa, this is turning into a thing. And I'm afraid of it being a thing, not according to my plan. Because in the past, when I've just gone with the flow has been at times very painful for all parties involved. So at that point, aside from just acknowledging your feelings and allowing you to have that and not make excuses for whatever, but just to look at, why did I behave like that? It's like, dude, I'm scared shitless that I'm going to get hurt or that I'm going to hurt you and that this is moving faster than it should. Mm-hmm. Emotionally speaking, of course, now everyone keep in mind, there's no physicality at this point at all. So it's not going too fast. Like, we slept together on second date. We shouldn't have done that. It was just like, whoa, like we're in a teepee and they're doing a flower ceremony. And then at the end of it, she's like, and you two are now married. I'm like, whoa, all of my love avoidance.
Shouts to Vivian.
all my past love avoidant triggers and fears of being enmeshed or engulfed or trapped or moving too soon or getting hurt or abandoned or whatever, or like ding, 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 oh shit. So like I close my eyes. I'm just like, la, 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 I can't see you. I can't hear you.
She didn't just say that we were married.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just too much. I'm just like, this does not make sense. I can't figure this out. And so in that moment, again, nothing good ever comes from closing. What was I going to do? Like, dude, like slow down, slow your roll. Like what? I mean, I could have very easily gotten defensive or not acknowledge your experience, but instead, because of the open-heartedness that medicine specifically creates.
Yes,
I mean,
it is medicine of the heart.
As bizarre as I find that particular cacti and its effect on you, because you can't figure it out. The more you try to figure it out, the more annoying it gets.
The more it eludes you, yes.
The more it eludes you, versus some other experiences where it's just so crystal clear and I know exactly how to meander in those realms. The realms of the peyote, in my experience, are very obtuse. Is that the word? Is that a word? Obtuse? Just they're opaque and kind of vague, and you don't really know what's going on. But the key thing that I'd have experienced in all 6 experiences is that my heart opens in a way, and there's this love that I experience for everyone and myself, and there's this capacity for open-heartedness. So when you expressed what was going on with you, and you had those little triggers that had come up, I was able to somehow keep my heart open and then actually go back into my mind and use the analytical mind in a constructive way. And that's where it went next. I thought, okay, so Luke, what you've got here is a woman who is opening her heart to you, and she's saying, and I think you even said this, like, dude, I'm here. If you want to go.
If you don't see me in full now, I don't know that you ever will, is what I said.
Yeah, and you're basically like, I'm ready to go there. And as scared as I was, because it defies all logic, this is not how this is supposed to work. That's kind of where I was. I just thought, okay, well, let me open my heart and open my mind. And then I was brought to, by intuition and the guides of sorts, a list that I had made, or a document rather, that was my manifesto of the perfect mate. Just every attribute of their character and values and preferences and lifestyle and looks and all the things you could want in a dream partner. I had created a vision for that, and I'd written it down, and it's in Evernote somewhere. I probably still have it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I do. It exists in the cloud, and so in that moment, I remember just going, well, I'm kind of freaked out, but here's this woman. Let me see how this adds up against what my vision is, and then I started to dictate to you from memory all of the things that I was looking for and the dream partner that I had envisioned. And, 99.999% of those things were sitting there right in front of me. And that was just, no matter how many defense mechanisms I had or how afraid I was of being vulnerable or any of that, I just there was empirical evidence that not only proved to my heart, but also to my mind that this actually does make sense,
Yeah.
And so it was a really interesting meeting of heart and mind, because it was on paper. I had written it when I was not on peyote. I had written it when I wasn't under the influence of hormones or pheromones or excitement or, the intrigue or mystique of someone new or any of that. None of that was there. I'm sitting right at that desk, actually, is where I wrote that freaking thing. And there it was. And it was she has this ding, 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 ding on the list. And most of those things, and the things that were most meaningful to me, were your character attributes and your actual, who you are as a person of integrity and wisdom and kindness and all of the things that I really have grown to even cherish more in you. And you're also super hot and all of those things too. Those are on the list, trust me. I won't share that list, but
big boobs. Check.
There's some things like that. Sure. We all have our preferences. And so in that moment, it was just, I remember just crying, I think, right? I mean, you'll remember the details, but inside I was just like, oh my God, Luke, fucking surrender. Let go. Just let this be what it is. And then I think the conversation went something like, okay, well, let's give this a shot. And now we're a couple. And then I think what happened, then we finally went to sleep. This is after being up for however many, 20 hours or something.
Yeah, at least.
Went to sleep. And I believe the next morning you kind of gave me a buyer's remorse clause.
Yeah,
a way out.
I did.
Something to the effect of okay, so we had this profound, deep experience. You conveyed that, you had some kind of awakening, Luke, and you're willing to give this a shot. I'm going to give you an out here. Like, how are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, for sure.
Stone cold sober. And is this something you still want to pursue and all that?
Well, yeah, definitely. Because I'm at a place in my life, like age wise, what I want to experience where I am never going to want to coerce someone to be with me. Like it needs to be full on from your end. Like this is a yes. And so even before we went to bed, I said, I was like, okay, how about we sleep on this? This was a lot. This was a big,
you think?
This is the big conversation. Let's sleep on it and let's just revisit it in the morning when we wake up. And I woke up long before you. So yeah, when you came out, I was sitting on that yellow solar plexus chakra colored couch and you came over and I said, how are you feeling about what you said last night? How are you feeling about it now? And I'll never forget it. You were kneeling on your knees on the floor, kneeling in front of me, like kind of, sitting in between my legs as I'm sitting on the couch, if that makes sense. And we're facing each other. And I remember we just intuitively leaned in and pressed our third eyes together. So we had our foreheads touching as this conversation was starting to happen. And you said, I nothing's changed. Like I feel the same. And then I remember expressing to you that it would be my greatest honor to be with you and to be your girlfriend and to be together as a sacred couple. And it was in that Airbnb in the middle of the desert, with our third eyes touching, that we officially became a couple real quick in a weekend.
Defied all logic and all plans, and thankfully so. And I think that there is a time to have a plan, and there's also a time to be willing to adjust that plan when your heart says otherwise.
And when you can feel God at work.
Yeah, and to acknowledge like what's motivating you to move in one direction or the other, and I just had to trust. Like I hope I'm not delusional right now, and I hope I'm not being motivated by trying to please you or whatever could be
trying
motivating.
to escape the discomfort of that conversation.
Yeah, totally. And that occurred to me. Like, am I doing that? Shit, do I just want to make everything okay? And I did just want to make everything okay because it was uncomfortable as fuck. But also, I could have said like too fast, like, whoa. Pump the brakes. Like, let's go back home, And
you said you knew, though, if you had done that, you could feel that it was going to be a wrap for me.
Yeah, I don't think it was a negotiation for you. I got the sense that you were like, dude, if you can't see me, like, I'm here, I'm open. You were so vulnerable and so receptive. And I admired that, the courage that it took to put yourself out there in that way.
Yeah.
And it was like, damn, she's really putting herself on the line here. And I don't want to discount that. And so, there's a million other stories, but I want to move toward kind of wrapping it up.
Since we've been talking for 3 hours.
It's 2. But, hey, man, maybe there's, a couple people hanging online that might be inspired, that there is hope. Because I honestly, at times in my life, thought like maybe, as you said earlier, that I'm just like, I suck at this and I'm just never going to get it right. And maybe I just have to learn how to be alone. And I never totally gave up hope, but I did consider that as an option.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm just too broken or karmically, like that's not my path. And I'm just supposed to be by myself, as I have been really most of my life, at least in my heart,
Right.
So I think the funny thing about it is that the bond between us has continued on in very untraditional and unexpected ways, because we still, and this was the one part of my plan that we did get according to my plan, was that we weren't physically intimate for quite a while.
A long time.
Into the relationship, and well after we had decided to be committed and monogamous. And I don't think we ever used the word monogamous. It's just implied that we're together, and that means you're not together with other people, which I love. But it's just then that piece became no big deal. And I was very afraid when I was dating to express that, because modern women don't really understand that. Like, let's date for a while and not have sex until we're
not
together.
Not all modern women, because I was celibate for basically 5 years.
Well,
so.
You're an exception, but I have experienced where a woman's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What year is this, dude? Are you serious? That's because I was so freewheeling in the past, as I said. I wasn't that discriminating about with whom or when I decided to be intimate, and that gets tricky. You know, hearts get hurt when you're careless, mine and others, and I'm regretful of some of those experiences. So I thought I'm going to really honor the physicality element and make sure that I'm really wanting to be with someone and I can fully have a heart-centered physical experience and not be thinking like, are they with other people? Am I? And like all that. I just don't want all that messiness. But for us, it was just done for us through medicine journeys and different things go, cycles
Moon
and
cycle,
different things.
all the nature-based sacred divine things were not letting us be intimate.
It kept us from being intimate for quite a long time, which was fine with me because that's how I wanted it. I wanted to be special. I wanted to get to know someone. I wanted to have more meaning and sacredness around the physical part. Because as I said, in the past, at times there hadn't been, and I know what that's like, and I want more out of that experience. So there's that. But the really funny thing, the plan, and I don't know if I've ever illustrated this to you in terms of my linear timetable, but it was like meet a few people, date a few people, you're going to gravitate toward the one you most bond with and kind of eventually weed out the other people, become exclusive with the one person that you like the most and they like you the most. Then you date for, exclusively for, I don't know, maybe a year. You each have your own houses and your own lives. And then if that all goes well, then eventually you move in together and maybe after a year at least. And then, and so on into,
you've told me this.
A period after that, perhaps you propose and you get engaged. Then way long after that, you get married. And then maybe down the road, you have kids. It's kind of like.
Well, at that point, I would be like a 60-year-old mother. So,
Well,
but anyways.
Yeah. Apart from that, we are biohackers though, whether you like it or not. But anyway, I had this kind of linear plan. So moving in together was not gonna, that was like, what? No, you had an apartment in New York. You had to go get this thing together. And then, you were going to move out here. And I think initially, just logically, I thought, well, yeah, she'll go get her an apartment somewhere, a house or whatever. And then, we'll see each other when we see each other and we'll each have our own separate places until we're really sure, then we'll move in. But somehow in this unspoken way, I don't think either of us ever expressly said it, but it sort of was just implied or just naturally happened that you were going to come out here for a longer period of time and just stay here at my house. And then it's kind of just like before a logical timetable started living together.
Yes.
And then this pandemic hit.
Correct.
And we're going, oh my God, thank God we're able to trust the heart plan and not the brain plan.
Right.
Because you'd be stuck in New York or going to live with your folks or doing whatever you'd do. And I'd be sitting in this goddamn house alone. No offense, Cookie, but I'd be sitting here with my dog.
And when we went on one of those walks, that's what I was acknowledging and giving gratitude for, is that had either one of us at any point in this pathway, any point in the juncture, yanked back, tethered back, flinched, gotten in fear mode, said no, not remained open, it would have thrown a glitch into this divine plan, because I came out here with the cat to officially move in. And then within 48 hours, like the pandemic erupted. So had either of us pulled back at all, this whole thing, this current beautiful situation that we have would have been totally different. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting to observe how destiny, fate, karma, grace, luck,
divine timing, miracles
has played a part in this, and how it's been such a relief to be able to share this time together and being cooped up. And it's also been a really good stress tester of the relationship, because you get to know someone and it's relatively new, and you take a trip or you move in really quick or you do whatever, and you're forced to spend a lot of time on top of each other. You can annoy the shit out of each other, even if you really like one another and have a great relationship. So I think it's fascinating that you and I have been spending so much time inside this house.
You couldn't be spending more time together.
It's like an extended honeymoon that lasts months, and we're just having the best time ever. And I appreciate that about you, and I appreciate that. God, thank God we're not going through this weird time on our own individually, because it's just, there is such a safety in numbers and such a coziness and a love in the house that makes having to be home actually kind of nice. Not really missing anything, because everything I want is right here under the roof, including you.
Thanks, honey.
For someone that, and we will wrap it up, but I just, I wanted to get into some of your path a bit and just shamanism and things like that. But one question that did pop in my head that I think would be interesting, as we've just described how this plant medicine of peyote really facilitated the speed at which our relationship has moved, and the structure and the opening of our minds and hearts, and us being able to operate in a place of trust that has obviously proven itself thus far to be legitimate. What would you say to someone who thinks plant medicines are a drug, and that if you go to a ceremony that you're off doing drugs or something like that, because I know some people have not had that experience and they equate a mind-altering substance like peyote as drinking alcohol or doing cocaine or any of that.
Oh, God. So I'm like feeling so many huge waves. Even just hearing you pose the question that way hurt my heart so much.
Well, as someone myself, that anyone that's listened to this show, I quit doing drugs and drinking 23 years ago because I had to and wanted to. It was not a successful mission for me. I was in a world of hurt, and so I cleaned up my act, and I'm very grateful that I've been on the path of the straight and narrow since then. And in the past year plus or so, I've had a number of different experiences in the plant medicine realm, not for recreational purposes whatsoever. And anyone that's done them can attest that there's not any recreation in doing 4 nights of ayahuasca or peyote or whatever it is. It's work, if that's what your intention is. And so it's something that's really opened up new worlds of healing and understanding for me and spiritual growth and connection in a way that I'm so grateful for, and it's so profound. And for me, it's just such a different thing than doing a drug to escape or something of that nature, know?
Right.
So I know this is something you understand, but I think many people don't understand what the difference is. And I think some people perhaps think people like me are deluding myself and that I'm just finding an excuse to do drugs and calling it medicine or something of that nature.
Well, one of the interesting points you already hit on, it is the antithesis, drugs to distract or to numb, and plant medicines are the complete opposite. It's to face oneself, so that right there is huge, complete opposite difference. So for me, I won't get into it too long because I know we've got to wrap soon, but the place from which I operate from shamanically when it comes to plant medicines is you only work with a plant medicine if it calls to you, because each of these plant medicines have a spirit. They are a living spirit. And so this highest divine intelligence and consciousness and energetic frequency and vibration that is this living being, that is this living spirit, that is grandmother medicine, ayahuasca, or grandfather medicine, peyote, or whatever the other examples are. The spirit of this plant, if it wishes to commune with you and wishes to work with you, it will call to you. And this call will be unmistakable in some way. You will just know. There's just a deep knowingness that the spirit of peyote is calling to you. And if you are questioning whether it's a call, it will continue to come in, and the call most times will get louder and clearer and more frequent. And so in my journey, after my divine intervention and spiritual awakening day, I then set out on a quest to just heal and whole myself. It was never a quest to become a shaman. It was in my devotion to heeding the calls and the guidance from my surrender moment to Great Father, Sky, Great Spirit, God, Consciousness Source, and down into Great Mother Earth, Pachamama Gaia, surrendering to those places and asking for their guidance. They would show me the different healers I needed to go to heal myself. In that devotion to that healing work, I had done enough practices that my internal light body and frequencies and codes had turned on. The ancient wisdom of my calling had turned on, that I am a shaman. And I had been a shaman and on the shamanic path for many, many, many years, having never done a plant medicine. And in fact, I, at some point, actually kind of started, I'm not proud of this, but I started to pride myself on the fact that I was a shamanic practitioner who had never done plant medicines, because there's so many misconceptions and misunderstandings and confusions around shamanism in general. And one of the biggest is that it automatically equates to plant medicine usage, and that is not true. And so it would blow people's minds when I would do podcast interviews or just in conversation, when they would be like, wait a second, you're a shaman and you've never done plant medicine. And I'm like, yes. So I took that as an opportunity to educate and to teach. And I began to like that. So the first plant medicine that began to call to me was ayahuasca. And I know there's not time, unfortunately, for me to get into these really wild stories, how they presented, and the way it all came to me is really, really wild and miraculous. But I really had to question in that first ceremony that I actually didn't even know was going to turn into a plant medicine ceremony. It's very wild. But then I had to confront that within myself of like, oh, I need to let this identity go that I'm a shaman who has never done plant medicine or never worked in a sacred way with plant medicine. So I had to really let that identity break down. And I have just, in a most honoring and sacred way, only worked with the medicines that have called to me. And that's how I do it. And that's how I advise it, because they will provide to you with wherever your soul is at. It will provide to you whatever energetic messages and guidance that your soul needs at that time for your evolution to go where you need to go next. And that's the beauty of it. You may work with ayahuasca once and grandmother spirit gives you what you need, and you may never hear the call to work with that plant medicine again. And that might actually be your journey with plant medicine, is that one ceremony. Or you may continuously, like some people feel then called to open up a facility, the call for that particular medicine grows to that magnitude. Or for me, it was just a couple of grandmother medicine ceremonies. And then the call, gosh, I wish I had time to tell the Peyote story, but I don't. The way that came in was so pronounced and just so deep and profound for me. The call, I will just continue to honor it when and if it comes in. And if it never comes in again, I'm fine with that, because I live by the calls. And that is personally how I feel these spirits and these highest intelligences and consciousness and plants should be worked with. They should never be worked with in a dishonoring way. They should be done only with the highest of intentions, facilitated by people that devote their life to these practices, that take sacred oaths to work with these medicines and do it in the most reverent way. And that is just what I choose to do. And that's what I advise people to do. I don't know if that even answered your question, but that's what came out.
Well, it certainly was passionate.
Okay. Yeah, you get me talking about shamanism and yeah.
Well, I think in the context of, wrapping up the story of how
that is the most sacred work, and recreational drug use is not that.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is, the fruits of our experience would have been much different had we gone to the desert and went on a Coke binge for 2 days, or a drinking binge.
I cannot even just hearing you say that feels so weird.
But that's how, that's the contrast between those experiences. Like, the opposite of escaping, as you said so correctly, the opposite of escaping from your current reality. Medicine's done with the right people at the right time in the right way, bring you deeper into yourself and into reality, however uncomfortable that even might be at some point. Or in other circumstances, for me, those experiences have been absolute, sheer, utter bliss, oneness, and communion with God, Mm-hmm. And for anyone that's not had that type of experience brought about through medicines, that could sound unlikely or impossible. But when you've been there, you just know. Mm-hmm. And I just think that piece of our relationship is really interesting, and something that I'm glad we had the opportunity to share and experience together, because as you said earlier, part of my vision was someone that was open-minded to that experience, but is also not someone who does habitual recreational drugs or alcohol, and no judgment against people that do. My hat's off to you. Have fun. Have one for me. But that's just not my path. And I really would not want to be in a relationship with someone who drinks or smokes weed habitually, or does drugs to escape, or even just to party and have fun, even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just
I don't do any of that.
Yeah. And that was one thing I was on my list, was someone who's doesn't do drugs, doesn't have issues in that way, but is also in understanding of, respectful of, and open-minded or willing to participate in the other side of that, which is,
sacred ceremony.
Sacred ceremony, or the use of, clinical psychedelics with the therapist, or, some of the things that are opening up now in both realms, both clinically and in terms of shamanically. So I just feel like I won the lottery in so many ways, that being just one of them. And I think it's an important distinction to make for people who don't have the experience or lack the understanding and think that all of those things are categorized together as one thing, because they're most certainly not.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to touch on that and get your perspective as someone who is kind of like me, even though, you're not, you don't have the past that I have and a reason for avoiding drug abuse.
I've never, said one day like, okay, I'm becoming sober. It's just that just organically opened up for me. I just became sober because the vibrations, the lower vibrations of alcohol and marijuana and some of those things for me just energetically were not a match. So it just phased itself out.
Yeah, I remember when you found the bottle of red wine in my kitchen.
Felt so
a couple
off.
of weeks ago. You're like, what is this doing in here? I'm like, I don't know. Someone left it here, whatever. It's I didn't even know it was there. When I did, I was just going to leave it in case someone came over at some point.
Energetically, it felt so weird.
Drink, and you're like, can we get rid of this? I was like, wow, that's cool. That's my girl.
It just felt super low vibe.
Yeah, it's funny.
And again, I'm not judging, just for me energetically in my life. If you're sitting having a glass of wine right now, fine. It's just for me, the energetics of that feel very low.
Yeah.
And I wanted it out of the house.
Yeah, I think it did. Oh, I gave it to my...
Get it out of here.
I gave it away, actually. I gave it away. I did. That was a good call. Okay, so in wrapping this up, I've been watching you diligently work on your book.
Oh, yeah.
You got an amazing book deal, and which has unfolded since we've been together, which was a huge dream of yours.
So beautiful, yeah.
So the book won't, you're writing it now, so it won't be out by the time this comes out, but tell us about the premise of your book and stuff, just as a little sneak peek.
Well, teaser taster. Yeah, so the book is called Power Animals, Energy, Medicine, and Meditations for Your Greatest Life. And I'm writing a fresh, new, modern, and sacred spirit animal guidebook. So I'm going to be featuring 100 different animals. I am a medium for the spirit animal world. And that has been something that opened up from the day I had my awakening. And that relationship with the spirit animal kingdom has only grown and grown and grown every day for many years, to the point where I channel their messages and give live readings. I'm a medium for them. I'm one of, in a very sacred, honoring way, I'm one of the voices for them. So each animal will share their channeled messages and the healing traits and properties that they're known for. And then there's a power practice for each animal, so that, I wanted to go beyond just, I see ladybugs all the time, so I go to the ladybug entry and I read that she represents this, and then what? Because people always are like, then what? So these power practices are channeled rituals and meditations and practices specifically designed for that animal, so that you can deepen the rapport and understanding of why they're coming into your life, and learning in 100 different ways how you can work with the spirit animal world, because it has been one of the biggest game changers for me. And then there'll also be a card deck with it. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be sharing, I guess I'll put this out there. I hadn't even thought about this until this moment, but I am sharing with some of the animals, people that have had really life-changing experiences working with a particular animal, some of the incredible indigenous elders I know, some of the very high-level spiritual teachers that I know. They've already contributed for the animal that they want to share about, and celebrities, just different people. So I don't even know where they'll submit their responses, but if somebody is listening and you've had a really life-changing sacred experience working with a particular animal, maybe send a message to one of us, and perhaps
AlysonCharles.com.
Yeah, you can go to my website.
Contact form.
Yeah, there's a contact form. Okay, thanks for helping me out with that piece, because I was not going to say this at all. But if you feel called and your story feels in alignment, then maybe I'll get back in touch, and you will perhaps be one of these stories in the Power Animals book. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm sure I'll mention it in the show notes, but then you and I, one of them will have already passed because it would have come out yesterday at the time of this release, but we're going to be doing this Friday, actually on April 24th, 11:30 to 12:30 Pacific time, a live stream event together.
I know. So fun. So cute, honey.
Yeah, I'm excited with Frequency Mind. And so people can go to lukestory.com/events. So many of our live events, mine and yours, have been postponed due to this current situation. So everyone's kind of coming up with unique and creative ways to spend time together online. So we'll do that together this Friday.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And then tell us about your online course that you've also been working very hard on.
I have. I've really poured my heart and soul into this, so thank you for asking. It's called Soul Reboot Spirit School, and I had done a first version of this past summer, and it was so life-changing for all the participants that I knew I wanted to do another round. So the irony of divine timing, I filmed this version of Soul Reboot Spirit School in San Francisco to camera, so it can be available to anyone across the world. And it was like the next day that the pandemic broke out. And when I was asking myself, how can I, because I was deep diving once this erupted and really learning the new energy systems, and I wasn't feeling very activated on social. And I kept asking, how can I be most of service? And one of the ways and one of the answers that came through, it was genuinely through this course. So it's a 9-class online course, and every single class I guide you in different really, really potent and powerful shamanic journeys and meditations to explore pretty much. I mean, we're covering a lot of the dimensions and facets of ourselves. There are guided shamanic journeys to meet your core power spirit animal, or if you already know that one, you can call the animal forward that wants to work with you most at this time. There's past life journeys. There's shadow work journeys for you to face and transcend your greatest fears, which is an absolute vital key in embodying your greatest power. And it's just so wild to realize that this course could not be more perfect for this time, because it's really going to help people birth a new trust, a deeper trust within themselves. It's going to teach you how to access and communicate with the unseen realms, because everything is changing. And we're entered into what we call shamanism is a void, an energetic void, which is what is occurring on the planet. And anytime you get thrust into that, it can feel very foreign and confronting and scary. And Soul Reboot Spirit School are all these incredibly powerful rituals and practices that can keep you centered in your power, and you can really align with your calling. So a lot of people have lost their jobs, and I can tell you from experience, you can come out of these voided states as your grandest, brightest self. These spaces also are the field of infinite possibilities. So I'm going to take you into the spaces of these different possibilities so you can emerge like a phoenix rising and not have this time, take you down. It can be a very miraculous time. So for your listeners, we'll do a code. If this speaks to you, which I hope it does, you can go to soulreboot.alysoncharles.com. And then when you're checking out, just put the code Lifestylist and they'll get 10% off. And I just made this very accessible and affordable. And no matter where you're at on the spiritual path, this course will serve you. Whether you're brand new and you want to be held in safe, sacred space, I do that. Or whether you've been walking it, these shamanic journeys, you can go as deep as you need to go on a shamanic level. So it's there for everyone. And I'm really, really proud of it because it's honestly the culmination of many, many lifetimes of my work. And when I was watching the edited videos back, it really hit me. I was like, wow. It's taken a lot for me to get to this place where I can hold this kind of powerful energetic container and deliver all of these different shamanic journeys. It's big, and I'm really, really proud of it. And it can serve you in profound ways. I've seen it happen for thousands and thousands of people for many years. And now it's available to anyone listening.
Awesome.
Yeah, very exciting.
That's a really great breakdown. Damn, thanks. I'm glad we recorded that. In terms of the timeline on that, at the time of this release, it will be April 21st, I believe this drops, and your registration would have opened yesterday on the 20th. Right. Is that right?
Yes.
And then it's open for how long? Because I know people hear stuff like this and they're like, cool, yeah, I'll do that next month, but this is a limited.
Yeah. Especially to get the intro rate, you got to get in within these first 2 weeks. So yeah, okay. get in and get on it. I don't know that we want to close the door because, like I said, this can be really of service in a big way for this pandemic time. But if you want to make it the most cost effective for you, you've got 2 weeks to do it.
Okay,
which
cool.
At this point would be 13 days.
And we'll put the links and the promo code and stuff in the show notes. And if you're on the newsletter, you would have already had that in your inbox with all of the clickable links and everything we talked about in today's episode, although I think we mostly talked about ourselves, and we're so self-indulgent.
No, don't say that.
No, I'm just kidding. We're not. If anyone made it to the end of this, they don't think that because they learned something. But in all seriousness, if you go to lukestory.com/newsletter, you will get the newsletter for next week's episode and everyone after that with the complete show notes and clickable links and anything mentioned every episode. And that's also going to have a link in that newsletter for complete transcripts of every episode. So every word spoken on this podcast from now on is written out, and you can get that by going to lukestory.com/newsletter.
Wow.
So there, bunch of family plugs in there. And with that, my darling angel, sweetheart, I just want to say I love you so much. You're such a stellar, stellar woman. You're an inspiration to me, and your kindness and wisdom and integrity and honesty and commitment to your own evolution and growth and everything about you is just fantastic to spend time with. And there's no one else I would rather share the end of Western civilization with.
You can't top that. You could not have put that better. You know how much I love you. I mean, I'm grateful beyond words that the good Lord brought us together. It's truly a miracle. And you're the most inspiring person I've ever met. And for those that don't know your backstory, I hope that they can locate it somewhere and learn it, because you have faced and traversed some of the darkest, scariest waters and come out just like such a shining, beautiful king. So thank you for treating me so well. And my last words of wisdom are, do not settle. Because I, so many times in my path, like after going through such a traumatic previous, very long-term relationship and having so much PTSD and having to do so much deep work around that, I could have chosen, to stay single and not that there's anything wrong for those people that choose that. But for me, I wanted to be in partnership, and all those years of being celibate, there were opportunities where I could have dated or could have been with someone. And that deep self-love that it comes back to just wouldn't let me settle. And I just thought, well, I just prayed, and you just treat me so incredibly well and just honor me, and you blow my mind every day. So thank you for loving me the way that you do. It's so liberating and so empowering, and you want me to succeed. You don't try to hold me back and stop my light. It's what I've always wanted. I wanted someone who would see my power and want it to grow. And you do that for me. And I cannot thank you enough.
Amen.
Amen. Aho.
So there's a very special episode of the Lifestylist Podcast. Thanks for joining us, folks. There'll be many more. We have plans, you guys. So if you enjoyed this conversation, you look forward to many more and some co-hosting and some fun things we have in mind, including, as I said, this Friday, our live stream where we're going to do some guided meditations.
Love and shamanic medicine, birthing your greatest life from the void. You're going to guide a meditation, and I'll take them on a shamanic journey.
Yeah, it's going to be rad. So I'm excited to work with you too. Mm-hmm. Excited to work with you, honey. All right, you guys, we're out of here. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me and our lovely guest, Alyson Charlies, in this very heartfelt episode of the Lifestylist Podcast. What a gift to be able to share her with you. If you'd like to get more of Alyson's magic, I want to encourage you to check out her brand new online course. You can find that at soulreboot.alysoncharles.com. That's soulreboot.alysoncharles.com. That's also in the show notes, as is your discount code Lifestylist, which saves you 10%. And then again, this Friday, April 24th, we'll be presenting a live stream together with Frequency Mind, a guided meditation, shamanic journey, etc. You can get entry to that virtual event at lukestory.com/events. Speaking of events, we've had a few of them postponed this year, but as of now, this is where you can expect to find me. Quicksmala, Mexico, June 17th through 24th. Paleo Effects in Austin, July 14th through 16th. Upgrade Labs in Beverly Hills, July 14th through 26th. Meet Delic in LA, August 8th and 9th. And finally, the Health Optimization Summit in London, September 12th and 13th. You can find all of those live events, as well as the aforementioned live stream that I'm doing this Friday, April 24th with Alyson, again at lukestory.com/events. That's lukestory.com/events. Also on my website, you'll find another tab, lukestory.com/store, where you can find all of our show sponsors like Juve. They make this incredible red light therapy technology. Use this stuff all the time. If you're a regular listener, you know I talk about it all the time. I'm always posting it on my Instagram, @LukeStory. Once again, for that matter, follow Alyson. I am Alyson Charlies. You can also find Four Sigmatic there, the amazing medicinal mushrooms and coffee products these guys make. And of course, Super Fat with those chronic ass keto cookies and the fat packs. Super Fat is awesome. You can also find them at superfat.com. Just trust me on this one. Get yourself some of the Super Fat keto cookies. They are ridiculous. And it's unbelievable that they don't have sugar and carbs. I mean, like, honestly, eating them, I'm going, how are these keto? I don't even know how this is possible, but however they did it. And you can get down with that at superfat.com. So thank you so much for joining me on this very special episode of the Lifestylist Podcast. And again, I'll be back on Friday to just wreck your life big time, or at least your preconceived ideas about life, with Dr. Buttar, where we talk about the current pandemic. And then back to a more positive point next Tuesday with Rylan Englehart of Cafe Gratitude, where we talk about the soul of soil and regenerative farming. So I'm really excited about the content I have the opportunity to present to you. And I want to thank you so much for following the work here at the Lifestylist Podcast. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. Thank you for the ratings and reviews. Anything and everything you have done and will do to support the mission here is greatly appreciated. And with that, I will send you the highest blessings and goodwill until we meet again.